This is Atomic Shinobi and today I'm going to narrate first part of What If Naruto's body was taken over by Dark Kurama. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Naruto. The boy quickly wiped the drool from the corner of his mouth and jerked his head up from the desk. If you're just going to sleep while you're here, why do you come at all? I apologize, Iruka. Sensei. I'm simply worn out today. You say that every day. Maybe I'm tired every day. Iruka chose to disregard that final comment and carried on with the genjutsu lecture. A few pupils made fun of the fair-haired boy. When Iruka claimed that Naruto performed this every day, he wasn't joking. Naruto actually appeared to be dozing off in class more and more frequently. This time, he was only awake for roughly 5 minutes due to Iruka's screams. Naruto. Naruto heard his name and looked up. What? He asked, scrubbing his eyes from sleep. He looked about him. He was by himself with Iruka. Is it time for recess? Still only half awake, Naruto asked. School's out. Oh. Naruto got up, stretched, and started gathering his belongings. Is there something you want to talk about? No. All right. So tell me how you plan to pass tomorrow's exam. You've barely been awake for 10 minutes at a time, I believe. Do you have any experience practicing ninjutsu at home? It appeared as though Naruto heard nothing. Goodbye, Iruka-sensei. Gradually, he left the room, pulling his suitcase with him. Really, Naruto thought, no one cares, maybe Iruka, but everyone else despises me. To be honest, I have no idea why I attend school. It must have become ingrained by now. I hear people discussing suicide, but it would be painful. Perhaps not to the extent of the pain of solitude, but still. When he got to his dilapidated apartment, Naruto opened the door. It was never locked by him. Anything valuable he owned had already been taken or destroyed by children, and occasionally even adults, who despised him for reasons he was unable to fathom. A year ago, he had ceased his practical jokes. All it accomplished was encourage more people to break into his apartment and land him in more hot water. I'm not sure if I want to attend tomorrow's exam. Right, Iruka? Sensei. I haven't given it any thought. However, I suppose it isn't that important. I've never been very good at ninjutsu, no one will practice taijutsu with me, and I have no idea what genjutsu is all about. After closing the door and dropping his belongings there, Naruto fell onto the adjacent couch that the previous owners had left. Presumably because towing it to the dump wasn't worth it. Naruto understood why he slept so much. There is no pain while you are asleep. Everything is at ease. Before he hit the couch, he was fast asleep. Naruto became conscious. He detested having to wake up. He had to return to reality, where he was vehemently despised by nearly everyone he knew and many he did not. He cast a quick glance at the crooked analog clock that was hanging on the wall. It is 8 o'clock. I might as well attempt the exam now that I'm awake. Furthermore, even if I fail, which I most likely won't, I can at least expend enough energy to become fatigued enough to go to sleep. Naruto took his time eating breakfast and making his way to the school, arriving at 9:30. While the man took his picture, he turned to face the camera. He held off. He entered the room when it was his turn. At the far end of the rectangular room, behind a table, he observed 3 men holding clipboards, paper, and pencils. He only knew that the other 2 were employees of the academy, but he was able to identify Iruka in the middle. The person on the right said, "Stand over there," pointing to a marked X that was situated about 10 feet in front of the table. Naruto followed instructions. Now, I want you to make at least 3 clones of yourself using the replication technique, the man said. Their transparency and likeness to you will be evaluated. Can deformed clones be transparent? In my opinion, yes, and naturally depending on if you receive at least 3. When you're ready, you can move forward. Naruto shaped his chakra and created the seal. There were 2 clones. One had a strange-looking face but was non-transparent. The second was extremely transparent and pale white, hardly visible at all. All 3 of the men scowled. "I'm sorry," said the man on the right, who seemed to be speaking the most. "Better fortune in the upcoming year." Naruto cautiously left the room through the second door and entered the outside world. He started walking back to his home. Naruto thought idly, I remember the guy on the right, now. He was the one who relocated from a different village here. I can see why he was so courteous. Since they all grew up here, it is impossible that any other teacher than Iruka could be that kind. But why do all the grown-ups who were raised here despise me? That guy doesn't hate me, but he moved here before I stopped playing practical jokes. Perhaps I did something else, but what? Well, it's not important. A man whispered, "Hey kid, come here," from an alley off the side of the road as he was making his way home. "I wish to speak with you." Naruto gave him a quick glance. The man had a massive shuriken on his back, white hair, and was dressed like a Chunin. About Iruka's age, he appeared. He was unrecognizable to Naruto anywhere. Why would I want to do that? I am aware that none of your teachers will practice with you and that they are all very critical of you. You've been unable to heal on your own without assistance. If you'd like, I can teach you. Despite his best efforts, Naruto couldn't shake a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this man is different from the others. Perhaps he observed how they handled me and realized that I had done nothing to merit their treatment. Perhaps. Okay. The man smiled. All right. Just so you know, my name is Mizuki. I recognize you as Naruto. We'll need to do some advanced training because you're a little behind. Please retrieve a scroll for me from this location. Mizuki gave a brief explanation of which scroll he needed and where to get it. They won't let us have it if we ask, because they all hate you, but if you can get it, I can use it to teach you more quickly. This evening, around 9 o'clock, meet me north of here at the deserted shack in the forest. Sounds good? Naruto gave a nod. Fantastic. I'll see you then. Satisfied with his plan's initial success, Mizuki turned to leave. This was almost too simple given how the boy was treated by the villagers. Naruto was in disbelief. Someone is willing to teach me because they care. And to do so at a time when he might face consequences. As Naruto crept into the fortified building, he thought to himself, there's no way I can pass this up. His ability to remain unseen was undoubtedly one of his strongest suit. He had discovered this through the innumerable times he had had to flee from people, either as a result of some practical joke he had pulled or for some unidentified reason everyone detested him. You got it. My only task now is to meet Mizuki Sensei at the shack, which should only take an hour or so. Before he arrives, I believe I'll just go there right now and read it for a while. In front of the shack, Naruto was sitting in the clearing. Since he couldn't perform the purportedly simpler replication technique, he had taught himself the surprisingly easy shadow replication technique, but this next one was challenging. As he read the scroll further, it occurred to him that this village needed better security. Not even a genin, but I waltzed right in and took this scroll without any trouble at all. Well, whatever, it worked out for me. Where are my goggles, please? It seems that while I was getting ready, I left them at home. Whatever. The same building that Naruto believed required more security was traversed by the Sandaime. Every night before he went to bed, he took a walk here. It was soothing. He came for a walk each night. He counted all 43 of the scrolls that were hung along the walls every night. 24, 23, 24. This place was serene, because it might raise suspicions about the mundane scrolls it contained. No one guarded this building. In this manner, the scroll 37, he recalled, the scroll of forbidden techniques, would remain unknown to others. 31, 32. A scroll containing items that could be found practically anywhere wouldn't be worth stealing. He and a few others were the only ones who knew its location. 36, 37. The Sandaime went cold. The scroll vanished. He saw a pair of goggles by the doorway and quickly ran to the closest exit to sound the alarm. Why would you do this, Naruto? How did you figure out which one it was, too? Or did you? You must find Naruto and the scroll, and bring them to me immediately. The hastily assembled ninja exclaimed, Yes, Hokage-sama, before taking off in all directions. Naruto looked in the direction of the rustling bushes. Mizuki was standing some 20 feet away from him, precisely on schedule. Hey, Naruto, Mizuki. Sensei, here, let me see that scroll. Just as Naruto was about to give it to him, he heard a different voice. Don't give it to him, Naruto. Jumping into the opening, Iruka landed in between Mizuki and Naruto. What? How? Naruto succeeded. Was Iruka among those who wanted to prevent him? Mizuki only used you as a means to obtain that scroll. This scroll contains forbidden techniques. But Mizuki's expression took on a menacing smile. Yeah, how is it possible for someone to like you? Were you really under the impression that I would instruct you? Like everyone else in the village, I despise you. Even Iruka. Sensei, your precious one. Iruka turned to deny this, but Mizuki said, I'm sure nobody bothered to tell you, because that would be illegal. The law that existed at the time of your birth. Which law? I'm not aware of any laws. Obviously not. This is how the law operates. You can't learn about the law from anyone. Furthermore, nobody can reveal to you that you are born with the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Which is why you're despised by all. More than half of the villagers were slain by the Kyuubi. At least one family member was lost by everyone. Iruka's parents passed away, and every time someone notices the whisker marks on your cheeks, they can see evidence of the Kyuubi's presence within you. Was it really possible for any birthmark to be so ridiculous? However, you purchased it. What an incompetent. Iruka remarked, "You're not getting away with that scroll. What, will you put an end to me? Hee hee, I'll tend to the demon brat first, and then I'll tend to you." Mizuki then threw a shuriken directly at Naruto, who had stepped out from behind Iruka to get a better look at Mizuki. Naruto was aware that he couldn't avoid it. He was too stunned by what he had just heard to respond to an attack with such haste. He closed his eyes, waiting for the crunching sound, the pain that would end all of his pain. Naruto's eyes opened. Iruka was standing in front of him, facing him and wearing a pained expression. Iruka looked at Mizuki, but he didn't seem to be able to stand at all. And Naruto realized why. Iruka's back was embedded with the enormous shuriken. "Don't listen to him, Naruto." Iruka let out a gasp. I'm not against you. You took no action at all. Proceed now. Leave before. Before what? Mizuki smirked. Prior to me killing you. You just gave up on the possibility of ever defeating me. That scroll is now just as good as mine. With his second giant shuriken, Mizuki threw it at them. As it speeded in the direction of him and Iruka, Naruto could only stare. Iruka, however, whirled around and shoved Naruto aside. Only to have the shuriken decapitate you. Gazing at his former sensei, Naruto became fixated. Iruka was no longer alive. The one and only person who had ever shown him concern. The only person to ever give him any attention. Anger surged within him. He took Iruka sensei's life. To be honest with you, Naruto, I'm feeling giving today. You can live if you give me that scroll. After that, I'll head out. You'll be on your way, all right. To hell. Naruto let out a scream. He took up Iruka's shuriken that had killed her. He took Iruka sensei's life. Mass shadow replication. Mizuki found herself surrounded by 100 clones. They were all holding shurikens. This is your last chance. With a cry of terror, Mizuki held out hope that the boy would give up. Madness erupted from the Narutos. Mizuki was horrified to see each clone withdraw their shuriken. Time to die, Mizuki. Sensei. Shuriken were all Mizuki saw. Then he saw absolutely nothing. The ninja went back to the Sandaime to report their discoveries in the meantime, everyone aside from Iruka. Where's Iruka? Didn't he go to check north in the forest? Someone go find him. 5 of the ninjas dashed into the woods. The sight before the 5 ninjas astounded them, and Iruka without a head. If the severed hand was any indication, a bloody pile of shuriken concealed a body. And there was Naruto, lying on the ground, grumbling to himself while maintaining a blank expression in his eyes. Uncertain as to whether or not the child had done all of this, the nins walked up to him. Naruto got to his feet. The boy's eyes were lifeless holes that sucked the energy from the air around him, according to one of the nins who would swear later. The front runner nin motioned for Naruto to come along. He performed in such a rigid, robotic way that they began to question whether he was a puppet. They could hear Naruto talking once he got close enough. He put Iruka sensei to death. He took Iruka sensei's life. He took Iruka sensei's life. He took Iruka sensei's life. The Sandaime was ready to give Naruto a hard talk, but he couldn't bring himself to say it when he saw him. Naruto explained what had transpired after he had calmed down. Even though the majority of the ninjas in the room were too accustomed to despise him to feel any compassion, they were aware of the daily suffering Naruto endured. They believed he was deserving. Even though many ninjas disagreed, Sarutobi concluded that there was no need for punishment, and nobody dared to question the Hokage. After returning home, Naruto passed out on the bed. Naruto thought to himself, no one cares about me. Iruka was the only person who ever displayed even a glimmer of kindness, and he is now deceased. I had faith in Mizuki, but he took advantage of me. Nobody is concerned. A darkness that was deeper than slumber engulfed Naruto. Though it was unanticipated, he was prepared to accept it in any form. It was like witnessing someone running around the Hokage's desk, getting up, and walking away. Nobody was in charge. Is it even feasible? Would he ever be able to escape his damned cell for a little while? Taking charge, he opened his eyes and noticed the ceiling of Naruto's room. He looked down at the nightstand. He was in command. Somehow, The brat had disappeared, at least for the time being. He could not let this chance pass him by. Finally, Kyuubi thought. Tested Naruto's legs by Kyuubi. His limbs. They made a move. He attempted using his arms. They moved as he pleased, too. He got to his feet. And instantly collapsed. Those people make it seem so simple. On his hands and knees, he crawled. He stood up gradually. He got up. It should not take as much concentration to do this. I suppose I will have to adjust to it. Alright, let's start walking. Kyuubi made his way to the end of the tiny space and back again. He added clothes to the floor to make it look more realistic after he figured it out. He practiced jumping after he got the hang of this, which was much harder than he initially realized. When the sun came up, he was practicing running through the hallways while they were filled with balls, clothes, and other objects. Well, it was quite a while ago. Now what should I do? I could complete Konoha's destruction. But first, I should try to use my powers in this body. I'll head to one of the training areas that is the furthest away and check my physical capabilities. Keeping that in mind, Kyuubi laughed and moved in the direction of the door. Mwahahaha. Kyuubi came to a complete stop. I sound nothing like Naruto. I have the sound of Doom's voice. Similar to me. I could just run to the training area, but that would be a bad idea if someone saw me and I was unable to use my power. Kyuubi made the decision to check if he was mouthing his words correctly in order to practice his voice. After entering the bathroom and turning on the light, he discovered another issue. His sight. His slitted eyes were blood red. That doesn't appear suspicious, though. How can I take care of my eyes? Genjutsu, that is. Kyuubi had attended the classes because there was nothing else to do, even if Naruto hadn't. Not that it mattered, mind you. I focus on the thing I want to hide. I mold the chakra, he molds his vision glows blue, and presto. He had turned his eyes purple. I guess I'll have to get to work on that. Hold on, it was the chakra of Naruto. How could I have done that? Since I'm using his body, I suppose I should get better at hand seals, human techniques, Naruto's voice, and eye correction. And what's with this sensation in my abdomen? Poor humans and their hunger pangs. And the water they require. Restrooms as well. The powerful Kyuubi, perched atop the trash can. I detest people. After a few hours, Kyuubi had surpassed Naruto in his seal mastering abilities. Was he ever going to try? To ensure that he could effectively use Naruto's chakra, he had rehearsed a few techniques. His voice had become sufficiently softer to give the impression that he had caught a cold and gone through puberty in one night. While there is still room for improvement, the voice is passable for the time being. And his eyes appeared to be just a little bit darker than Naruto's. However, even though they couldn't see my eyes, any skilled observer could tell there was a genjutsu if they looked at them. But I have to see how strong I am. This cannot be overcome by the pitiful power of a human alone. He heard a knock on the front door abruptly. His first thought was to launch a massive fireball at it, but he changed his mind after realizing that he wanted to test the effects of his power on this helpless human body before demonstrating it. Walking to his front door, Kyuubi pulled it open. "Hello, Naruto," the Sandaime greeted. "I realize that you are probably still grieving for Iruka, whom? Sensei of the brat. However, I wanted to let you know that I believe you are proficient enough to be a genin because you have mastered the shadow replication. I'd like to give your forehead protector to you." Thanks. The graduates will be split up into teams, and you will need to attend a meeting in 2 days. It's going to be in room 100C. Wishing you luck. The Sandaime pivoted and moved off. Oh no, I really need to have this voice issue resolved. But first, to see how strong I am. It won't be an issue for me to mimic Naruto if I can utilize all of my power. Kyuubi strode toward the training grounds after having that thought. It appears that he will be working out. Although it's very unlike him, it works in our favor. We will finally eradicate the demon brat. Silently, the 15 villagers trailed behind what they thought to be Naruto. Kyuubi showed up at the training area. What should my target be now? Why are so many villagers traveling in this direction? I see that they are trailing me to torture Naruto. They'll be useful for target practice. Kyuubi activated his personal chakra. He was shocked to see how easily it emerged from the seal, even though calling it forth caused the genjutsu on his eyes to break. Later on, he would have to fix it. His energy surged through the barrier. The Yondaime was not as exhaustive as he believed. Hee. Demon boy, we got you now. Oh my god, you cannot. After having his throat torn out, the man was unable to move forward. Little humans, it's time to die. Mwahahaha. Killing again felt good. He had not killed in years, so even these pitiful villagers were a good laugh. However, my chakra was weakening my body, Naruto's. I made up for it with my regenerative boost, but at this rate, I won't be able to summon even 25% of my power before I pass out in a matter of minutes. To prevent my chakra from harming my body in the first place, I need to find a way to control it outside of it, protect it, or regenerate more quickly. Until I figure out a workaround, I'll have to limit how much I use it. And I believe that each time I use my chakra for something other than healing my body, I'm going to need to replace this genjutsu. That will be quite difficult. After learning what he needed to know, Kyuubi returned to Naruto's home. Still, I have to work on this voice. Kyuubi was able to correct his voice, but he realized that if he tried to use any of his demonic chakra outside of Naruto's body, it would be pointless to try to hide who he was. He discovered that his body's restorative abilities more than made up for the negative effects of sleep deprivation, so he did not require sleep. With the exception of the under-eye bags, which were insignificant. Kyuubi entered 100C, the classroom. He seemed to go unnoticed. They were occupied with internal conversation. Nobody looked at him, though he overheard a few express surprise at how Naruto managed to pass the test. Kyuubi was relieved that no one should be able to distinguish Naruto from other characters now that he had never been popular. He wondered a little bit where the kid had disappeared to. Though he tried to rouse it, the presence he sensed lurking in the background of his mind refused to respond. That might be for the best. The Chunin who had overseen the examination soon arrived in the room. While placing his coffee on the desk, he continued to grip the clipboard, which Kyuubi surmised contained the team's roster. "Quiet, everyone, I'm going to split you up into teams, and..." When two more boys casually strolled into the room, the Chunin paused. One carried a bag of potato chips and was overweight. One had his hair pulled back into a short ponytail. The boy with the ponytail appeared to drift off to sleep as soon as they sat down in the back of the room. "We appreciate you coming along, Shikamaru, Choji. As I mentioned earlier, you will be departing with your team leaders, who ought to be here soon, once I split you up into teams. Group 1". Kyuubi ignored the teacher. Until he heard Naruto's name, he would hold off. It was useless to find out which teams these worthless people were on. I'm going to have to depend on Naruto's abilities until I figure out a way to use most or all of my power. My fighting power is limited to a quarter, and the 2 is only effective for a short while. A quarter, though, might be enough if I can get this body to move quickly. However, even so. Uzumaki Naruto, Team 7. Sakura Haruno. Sasuke Uchiha. A black-haired boy had a blonde girl on one side who wept with despair and a pink-haired girl who leapt up with a squeal of delight. How peculiar. Hitaki Kakashi will lead your junin. The list comes to an end there. Has anyone not received a call? Alright. When your instructors arrive, you are free to depart. Everyone stood up and started to walk away, with the exception of Team 7. Kyuubi recognized the pink-haired genin as Haruno Sakura, and she started to voice her complaints. Where is the sensei Kakashi? He had better not be running late, but I suppose I get to spend some alone time with. She shot a furious glance at the boy with the raven hair and scowl. Kyuubi almost asked if he didn't qualify as a person, but changed his mind. I stand a lower chance of being noticed the less I say. Since I can't really train here, I suppose I can let this body sleep if we have to wait. Sasuke witnessed Naruto slouch onto the surface. What a stud. I knew it couldn't last long, but I'm not sure how he stayed awake for the team divisions. He grinned. That's alright with me. He is not necessary for me. As long as he stays out of the way, we'll be fine. How, though, did he pass? I'd heard he didn't pass the test. Whatever, it doesn't concern me. Hey, Sasuke, maybe after we meet the instructor, we could eat lunch together. No, Sakura appeared disheartened. But we're going to be on the same team, so we need to get to know each other, and so I thought that. Then have lunch with Naruto. Stop being absurd. I could just as well eat off of a rock. Then eat with a rock. There's no need to be so rude. Sakura turned to avoid letting Sasuke see the tears welling up in her eyes. After 2 hours, a junin with white hair entered the room with a serene demeanor as the door on their left opened. His hands were tucked into his pockets, and a drooping forehead protector covered his left eye. A mask covered the rest of his face, from the bridge of his nose down. I apologize for being late, everyone. On the way here, I got lost. A pathetic excuse, that is. This is your home, are you afraid? Sakura's tantrum startled Kyuubi and roused Sasuke from his introspection. Sasuke said, I take it that you are Kakashi, sensei. Yes, I am. Come over to the roof with me. When you're all there, we'll talk more. A cloud of smoke and leaves obscured Kakashi's appearance. Why do we keep waiting? Come on, let's go. Sakura sprinted out. Sasuke followed even slower, and Kyuubi followed even slower. This is not good, Sasuke thought. Kakashi saw the two, clearly lazy, boys jump up to the roof after the pink-haired girl leapt there swiftly. They are going to be very surprised if they intend to be that indolent during the bell exercise. With a smile, Sakura took a seat directly in front of him. With a frown on his face, Sasuke approached her and took a seat to her right. Naruto sat to Sakura's left and behind, gazing up at the roof. Naruto doesn't appear to have much self-confidence. He won't even give me a direct look. We will need to address that. Undoubtedly, Sasuke is thinking about getting even. Well, he should be fine as long as he doesn't take any hasty action. These were thoughts Kakashi kept to himself. All right, everybody. Your Junin instructor is me. Let's alternate naming each other, sharing our interests, passions, dreams, and other details. Sakura inquired, why don't you go first, sensei, and show us what you mean? Inquiring about their peculiarly dressed sensei, Sasuke was relieved that she inquired because he had been hesitant to ask about Kakashi himself. Naturally, he didn't thank Sakura at all. Thank you was only for cowards. No way could he be weak. He was vengeful. Kyuubi just sat there, gazing at the roof without moving. If I looked up, I bet this human would see the genjutsu on my eyes. Kyuubi thought, maybe he'll think Naruto is just sad or something, and then I won't have to look at him. Excellent. As you are undoubtedly aware, my name is Hitaki Kakashi. My interests are. I have certain interests. I do dream about various things. Sakura, you go next. Sakura whispered to her teammates, to be honest, all we really learned was his name. They both paid her no attention. Sakura, a little irritated, declared aloud, my name is Haruno Sakura. I enjoy. She turned to look at Sasuke and reddened. I like to go flower picking and have conversations with friends. My goals are to become a skilled ninja, get married to a kind man, and... She looked at Sasuke once more and flushed. With a bored expression, Kakashi said, you go next, Sasuke. Uchiha Sake is my name. I enjoy projecting strength and respect. Training is one of my hobbies. To kill a certain man is my dream. As I had suspected, Kakashi thought. Naruto, you're up. Looking deeper into the roofing tile in front of him, Kyuubi persisted. He was not going to look up. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. It still amazes me that I almost gave them my real name. That would be a humiliating way to be discovered. I like ramen. It had the sound of a query. I ought to have given the kid more thought earlier. I suppose sleeping is my hobby. My dream, I'm not sure. And to think that this is the child who once yelled that he wanted to be Hokage. I had no idea the villagers were that cruel. Or perhaps he was devastated by Iruka's passing. However, that does not mean that I can be lenient with him. All right, we will gather at Training Area 7 tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Avoid having breakfast. Sakura asked, why? Because you'd throw up. Kakashi disappeared into a smoke cloud. So, would you like to eat lunch with me, Sasuke? No, why? I'm busy. Oh. Sasuke proceeded towards his house, stopping at the edge of the roof to drop to the ground. Sakura trailed after him. Sasuke? Can I take a short stroll with you? Whatever. Sakura grinned as inner Sakura rambled on about concepts like true love. Kyuubi waited until they had vanished from view. He dashed to what he now called his training area as soon as he was certain they had disappeared. To compensate for his lack of strength, he needed to increase his speed. And then he started running back to the west end of the training area after touching the tree at the far east end. His extended shadow was cast in front of him by the sun, which was just starting to emerge from behind the horizon. He jumped onto and over the logs and rocks he came across while running. After an hour of non-stop sprinting, save for direction changes, his muscles ought to have been burning, but his rapid rate of regeneration allowed him to keep going. Kyuubi reasoned that there had to be a better way to accelerate. I must soon come to an end. The energy in this body is running low. It's fortunate that I give it more food than ramen. Those bunnies were excellent. However, this takes too long. I can't remain invisible in this world forever. However, I only see using my power in a safe manner through ninja methods, which I must learn from ninja, necessitating my staying here to complete missions and other nonsense. I'm lucky that I don't need to sleep. I'll go find some meat and give it another length. Perhaps a deer, if I can locate one. Then Kyuubi detected sound. And if I cannot complete all 500 laps around Konoha, I shall do 500 push-ups. How in the world? Kyuubi went to find out who was displaying such vivid enthusiasm. At the forest's edge, he came to a stop. He noticed two people, an older man and a boy he knew from last year's graduates, both wearing what looked like green leotards. Kyuubi furrowed his brow. 500 laps? Either they are insane, or they take their training very seriously. Can you tell, Lee, how much of a difference using weights has made to your training? Your youthful flames burn brightly within you. You have, of course. And I'll teach you a fantastic technique after we raise them for the third time. I'm grateful, Guy. Sensei. What is this method you mention? I have to be aware. I will tell you when. The two left Kyuubi's hearing early. Weights. And that's it. I can get better faster if I train with weights. But what kind of weights could I use? While searching for food, Kyuubi considered various methods he could use to lift weights. Anything other than ramen is fine with me. Just before dusk, Kyuubi made his way back to Naruto's residence. He understood that his body required brief intervals of inactivity, even in the event that he did not sleep. He observed the sunset, gradually dipping below the horizon. Eventually, Kyuubi had concluded that obtaining weights intended for exercise was the only way he could find something both small and heavy enough to use. However, Naruto was indigent and could not possibly afford to purchase them. Furthermore, I need more attire than this fluorescent orange ensemble. Furthermore, I don't want to ask for things because I can't risk getting caught. Who would have guessed? Hiding from common mortals, Kyuubi no Kitsune. However, that cursed seal that binds my life to this body also renders me mortal. I'll have to steal, I suppose. However, I can't exactly pilfer clothes and wear them in public. To buy clothes, I'm going to have to steal money. And if anyone notices the weights, I can't answer questions about them. In a village of ninjas, this could be challenging. Nor am I aware of any towns in the vicinity. Bravo. Kyuubi wore a black tee, shirt and navy sweatpants, which were the only dark clothes Naruto had ever owned. He employed a ninjutsu designed for nocturnal concealment. This constituted the final and third technique that Naruto acquired from the Forbidden Scroll. It was designed to be hidden, but it would also help him blend in during his nighttime raid. He shaped his chakra and formed the seals. Remembering the light absorption technique, Kyuubi did. Every part of his body, including his hair, nails, and skin, turned black. Though it appeared to be an illusion, it was in fact recognized as ninjutsu. Kyuubi was aware of the reason. Unlike genjutsu, hand seals are needed for it. Additionally, it makes the body absorb light, which turns the body black. It is difficult to notice since it isn't genjutsu. Nobody would be searching for ninjutsu because those aren't typically employed for covert operations. By now it was sufficiently dark. Just as Kyuubi was about to leap out of the only window in Naruto's house that worked, he noticed something. He was unsure of where to make his thefts. He had to commit financial theft. A bank would be well guarded and have money. I'll just break into a few stores, I guess. Kyuubi went over the nearby stores in his head. Which ones could he possibly hit in time? A smile appeared on Kyuubi's face. He made a seal. Method of shadow replication. There were 5 clones created. On each of them, Kyuubi applied the light absorption technique and explained his strategy. The clones gave a nod before leaping out the window. Kyuubi did likewise. He could hear the clones bounding for their targets, but he could not see them. As long as they avoided lights, they would be invisible, or almost invisible. Kyuubi dashed to his own location, which would be marginally more difficult to pilfer than the locations of the clones' bonds. They planned to rob 2 convenience stores, 2 grocery stores, and 2 clothes stores. He was going to rob a jeweler. He landed on the sidewalk in front of a toy store. The jewelers were on the opposite side of the shop. There was no way he could risk making too much noise by hopping around. When he turned around in the back, he noticed 2 Chunin watching the back entrance. They would have ninjas protecting it, of course. A ninja village exists here. I had assumed that patrolling ninja would be my only issue, but now what can I do? Is someone standing watch at the front door? Kyuubi crept back around the toy shop, glancing around the corner in front. 1 Chunin was standing beneath a street lamp. That is not going to work. I am not able to catch any light. I suppose I'll have to accommodate the 2 behind me. Kyuubi skulked back through the toy shop. He could hear the Chunin conversing softly. There was no fighting him. Without using any of his abilities, in seconds, he would be outmatched. He'd glow and be recognized with what little of his powers remained. In addition, any fight would most likely be noisy, and the Chunin might summon additional support. He could pick the lock on the back door or something if he could just get them away for a minute or two. However, how could he make them move? Their Chunin wasn't in vain. Kyuubi paused to reflect. Then it dawned on him. Kyuubi stood patiently while the clones positioned themselves. He would have a short window of time to retrieve the money before the clones were sent out once the Chunin departed from their posts. He took a quick look inside his pocket. All right, that navy cloth purse is with me. One can never be sure how much money is in a jewelry store. And right now, at any moment. The Chunin sighed and kept leaning against the wall. I can't believe I pulled guard duty here twice this week, Toru. I have stuff I have to do during the day, you know. The second Chunin answered. Oh well. At least we can talk to each other, Ichigo. The guy out front is probably bored out of his mind. It's easy money, though, it's not like anything ever. A clang that could only have been the sound of kunai colliding in midair interrupted him. He dashed into the street with his companion to investigate the source of the noise. 4 Konoha Chunins were seen fighting ferociously against 6 opponents, none of whom appeared to be wearing forehead protectors. It appeared that none of the nin could hit each other. Around the corner appeared the store's front guard. He took a look at the other pair. At the same time, all 3 nodded and jumped into the argument. Kyuubi attempted to unlock the rear door, secured. How would he ever open the door quietly, anyway? His clones were unable to strike each other, so they weren't producing much noise. Then he caught sight of it. It was a requirement of fire regulations that all exit doors open outward. As a result, the hinges were external. He attempted to use the tip of his kunai as a lever to push the hinge's bolt upward by placing it beneath it. The bolt gave way and jerked up about an inch before Kyuubi gave up. Kyuubi removed the bolt and proceeded to do the same with the remaining 2 hinges. As the door started to fall backward, he caught it and carefully placed it on the ground. After going to all this trouble, the last thing he needed was for the heavy metal door to give him away. He crept inside the store. An enemy nin easily avoided the kunai that Toru threw at them. It appeared that kunai's sole purpose was to harm inept ninja or divert the attention of skilled ninja. He made 2 more after that. He witnessed the front row guard launch a kunai at the identical ninja. Hopefully, nobody would notice. However, their luck was not in. The third kunai was deflected by a second enemy nin using his own. The Toru thought to himself as he sidestepped a spray of kunai, this might take longer than I had hoped. Kyuubi eventually located the safe after looking for it for a lot longer than he had anticipated. It was behind the counter, disguised as a trash can. Upon realizing that it was the inexpensive variety with the plastic combination wheel, he punched through it and took hold of as much cash as he could. He tucked the remaining amount into the bag he had brought and shoved what he could into his pockets. In the worst-case scenario, he could leave the bag behind and still escape with a sizable sum of money. Especially after noticing the large bill denominations. Naturally, this was a jewelry store. When he was done, he returned the safe to its original location with care. He could also replace the door, and his theft would go unnoticed for a long time, provided he was careful and the clones held out. Kyuubi ran to the rear entrance. It hadn't occurred to him to check the place out earlier, but he should have. Since he was a demon, he ought to have been able to destroy the village with ease rather than hiding there at night to gather supplies. Repositioning the door into the doorframe, he picked it up. The real issue now was how to replace the bolts in a silent manner. Ichigo noticed that there were no obvious forehead protectors on the enemy nin. These other Chunin probably spotted them while they were on an undercover mission. Strangely enough, there are so many of us Chunin that I failed to recognize any of them. His enemies were limited to dodging kunai and dancing away from the Konoha ninja, despite the fact that they appeared to be a cohesive unit. The guards had stepped in and prevented them from launching even a single attack. Ichigo noticed that the nin appeared abnormally fearful of being struck. He observed multiple gaps created by the other Konoha Chunin, which these nin could have taken advantage of with a couple of blows, but the unnamed ninja would not do anything to put themselves in danger. How cowardly. However, it might be a ruse to tire us out. Maybe they're very resilient. Even though the fight is quiet, someone will undoubtedly notice and attend. A Konoha Junin appeared, confirming his thoughts. Ichigo was able to identify him but was at a loss for a name. The Junin remained out of the enemy nin's line of sight until he abruptly emerged from the building's shadow and threw kunai at 3 ninja. Though the third ninja was only slightly slower than the other 2, he was still struck in the arm. Ichigo was surprised to see the nin disappear in a cloud of smoke, even though this shouldn't have been a huge deal. Gazing down at the spot where the nin had been, he looked. Indeed, footprints were present. A Bunshin was unable to leave prints. Unless the form was advanced. Any Bunshin of that caliber would be at least junin level, he realized with a start. As soon as the clone was killed, the other 5 nin launched an assault. Strangely enough, though, they leapt over the unidentified Konoha Chunin to take aim at the junin and the guards. Each Chunin faced one, while 2 went after the junin. In mid-jump, the nin emptied their kunai pouches at them and got ready for a hand-to hand battle. The junin sidestepped the kunai that were thrown at him and hurled 2 well-aimed kunai at his attackers. The kunai was aimed directly at their center of mass, and they had no chance of avoiding it because they were in the air. The kunai had become embedded in their chests. The nin then instantly vanished in wisps of smoke. The junin grinned. Precisely as I had anticipated. The junin listened for the true attacker, certain that the final 3 attackers would be dealt with by the remaining 7 chunin. Clearly, the clones were a distraction for something else going on nearby. Then an odd feeling came over him. A Gendai Tutsu. The jewelry store has it. No, directly behind it. The junin started running in that direction, but halted after a short distance. He yelled, "What is the meaning of this?" Kyubi didn't know how to change the bolts. He was unable to force them into position. He heard the distinct poof of a clone being banished all of a sudden. He had to move quickly. He made the hasty decision to simply jam the bolts as far inside as possible and hope no one noticed. In rapid succession, he heard 2 more poof-s. Bravo. It seems that another ninja has arrived. The second bolt was jammed into the hinge by him. He realized that his fictitious Konoha nin must have gotten in the way of what sounded like an older ninja when he heard a voice exclaim, "What is the meaning of this?" Compared to the chunin he had heard, the voice sounded older. Most likely, it belonged to a junin. However, he had given the clones explicit instructions not to meddle unless. Bravo. Someone has found me. That guy is definitely a junin. Why did I have to experience this? Kyubi made the conscious decision to ignore the obvious explanation. His heist of a jewelry store, for this. The junin was furious and perplexed. While the other chunin fought, these chunin, who had gotten in his way, were presumably clones and were just staring at him. And why were these chunin passed down by the clones too? They're also clones. The Konoha Chunin revealed their kunai to the junin. Will I have to engage in combat with all 4 of them? 3 kunai struck 3 clones when they suddenly flew in from the right. Since one hit dispelled the clones, the real chunin had finished dealing with them. There was only one lone clone left, who threw his last kunai and hunkered down ready for the inevitable onslaught. The junin attacked, sidestepping the kunai that was aimed poorly. He attempted a roundhouse kick with a swung leg. It would disperse even if the clone blocked it. The clone appeared to have been created by someone who was adaptable, as the junin was shocked and horrified to see that the creature could bend almost completely backward, grab a kunai from behind, and stab it deep into the back of the junin's thigh. With a painful groan, the junin delivered a swift punch that vanquished the final clone. The chunin appeared exhausted and had several small wounds, but otherwise appeared to be unharmed. The junin moved swiftly toward them and gave them a hard chest knock. Luckily, none of them are duplicates. He then said, "You, chunin, stay here and be on the lookout for any more threats." Hurrying as fast as his injury would allow, he ran towards the rear of the shop. Kyubi drove the final bolt partially through the hinge. That needs to be sufficient. I have to get out of here fast. Poof. S3, he heard. Quickly make that. Kyubi sped off through the rear alley. The alley that led behind each store was the best route for him to take in order to move quickly and stealthily. But he would be visible here if someone from the fight turned to look back. There was one last poof, and he heard someone running after him with a slight limp. He turned to look back as he rounded the corner, and seeing that his pursuer was not the chunin he had seen, he concluded that it had to be the late ninja, who he assumed to be a junin. Bravo, I will now have to lose him in the forest or the village. Still, how could he have known that I was here? Kyubi pondered briefly while sprinting in the direction of the closest forest boundary. The art of genjutsu, naturally, of course. I was clever enough to conceal myself with ninjutsu, but I neglected to take off my pre-existing genjutsu. With haste, Kyubi neutralized the genjutsu and leapt onto a rooftop before disappearing into the forest. The junin tried not to let his leg injury get worse and ran as fast as he could. A kunai stuck in his hamstrings, making it painful for him to run. Running after taking it out would cause him to bleed to death, even though he knew that running with it in would aggravate the injury a little. In order for him to run at roughly 75% of his typical pace. Though it was insufficient to overtake the ninja, it was sufficient to prevent him from fleeing. Before long, he realized that it was very difficult to see the ninja, and that the genjutsu that had warned him of their presence seemed to have disappeared. The nin's hair was black, its clothes were dark, and every exposed skin area seemed to be covered in black paint or dye. And, since there isn't a single black person in Naruto, it must be paint, dye, or another substance. How peculiar. He was irritated by how challenging it was, even though his junin training allowed him to see the nin in any case. He watched as the nin shot into the woods. He took out a stick and lit a flare to let people know where he was and that he needed help. Then he ventured into the forest after the enigmatic ninja. To his surprise, Kyuubi saw a flash of light coming from behind him. He turned to look back. An explosion. Nothing seems to be going well today. Before help could arrive, he would need to abandon the junin. Even though he had accelerated, he was aware that the only thing preventing him from catching up was the Jakunin's injury. I could possibly be able to get away if I can create multiple clones. Yes. Then, no, it was the genjutsu that caught me. While I'm in the village, I must use it. Bravo. To keep this a secret, I'm going to have to kill a junin. Kyuubi created 4 clones and applied the light absorption technique to them to make them resemble him before hiding behind a tree. Leaping into the upper branches, he directed 3 clones towards the attack while holding the 4th one back to serve as a ruse. He was almost out of Naruto's chakra, so he couldn't continue like this for very long. Furthermore, he couldn't take a chance on using his own chakra without revealing its demonic nature to all proficient ninja. He would then be prohibited from using it in public once more. Alternatively, it's possible that they will recall that Naruto once contained a demon. As it was, they detested him enough. He hunkered down on the branch, his clones advancing. The junin thought to himself, I'm never going to catch up at this rate. He followed the nin's every step, but the kunai cut into his leg a little bit more with each leap from tree to tree. His right leg, which was bleeding around the kunai, was already forcing him to favor that leg. He couldn't allow such a potentially dangerous enemy to go unchallenged, but he probably ought to have lit the flare and attempted first aid on his leg. A tree obscured the nin duck from his view. Was the nin stupid enough to think he, a junin, wouldn't see that coming through? He thought that 3 shapes were clones as they leapt out and withdrew their kunai. Seemingly not. The junin noticed some slight motion behind the tree. The ninja refused to put himself in danger. Alternatively, perhaps he was preparing a surprise attack. He hurled 3 kunai towards every clone. Easily dodging, they continued to approach. The clones leapt towards him, each flinging 2 kunai before drawing a 3rd. The junin knew that they held these to indicate close quarters fighting. He managed to sidestep 5 of the kunai, but his injury kept him from reaching the 6th one, which protruded from his right arm's bicep. That's great, I'll be in close quarters and I can't use my good arm now. He deflected 2 clones' vicious swings with 2 drawn kunai and turned his head just enough to prevent one from trying to stab him in the face. He spun around, feigning a melee strike before hurling his kunai towards 2 clones. While one escaped, the other, poof, ed into thin air. It wasn't by accident that I was promoted to junin. He witnessed the true nin emerge from behind the tree and start tossing kunai. These could be avoided with ease, but as the 2 surviving clones intensified their attack and his arm and leg kept bleeding, it was getting harder and harder. He launched 1 kunai towards the genuine nin, then leapt backward to avoid the furious onslaught from the 2 clones. Though it's unlikely that the kunai would actually hit the nin, it would temporarily incapacitate him from throwing kunai. He started the seals for the grand fireball technique while perched on a tall branch. If the clones move too slowly, it will not only dispel them but also notify any rescue personnel of my whereabouts. When he reached the final seal, he put his hand to his mouth. Sensing the chakra building in his lungs, he inhaled deeply, then he passed away. The kunai was extracted from the back of the junin's head by Kyuubi. The body plummeted to a depth of 40 feet. The real nin might have been a clone as well, but the junin had been too focused on avoiding the clones and the thrown kunai to consider this possibility. Oh no, I have to conceal the corpse. Where, though? Kyuubi paused to reflect. It would not go away. That could be found out and would take too long. I could try to disguise it so it appears different. Mizuki's physique, something about not defiling our honor by burying a creator, was the reason they never got rid of it. I can dismember the body and conceal it among Mizuki's remnants. After the altercation, The two clones picked up Mizuki's body and fled with Naruto in the direction of her final resting place. In order to ensure they weren't being followed, the third clone followed somewhat behind. "I'm sorry, Hokage-sama, but that is all we were able to determine." Sandaime let out a sigh. He had been inundated with reports of robberies from various small stores early this morning. Subsequently, there was the issue of the jewelry store theft, which resulted in 3 Chunin who sustained minor injuries and 1 junin going missing. The location of the flare's ignition was determined by the Anbu, who then raced into the forest and followed the bloodstain to a location where the trees had displayed signs of fighting. The outcome remained a mystery, but the junin had not shown up, and given the quantity of blood they discovered along the way, it's likely that he would have lost even if he had prevailed. However, the body was absent. A smaller blood trail led them to Mizuki's body, where they discovered multiple wild dogs feeding. They believed the junin's remains were being eaten by the dogs, and that the mysterious jewel thief had emerged victorious. Since that was now the apparent lair of this pack, they conjectured that the wild dogs had brought the body to Mizuki's corpse. Be on the lookout for any other attempts. I want double guards for the next 2 weeks at their assigned places, and 5 more junins to patrol the streets. If there is any sign of trouble, use a flare immediately. We don't want to lose another ninja because he or she thinks they can handle it alone. Does everyone understand? The room's ninja nodded. Good. And if anyone finds any evidence related to any of last night's thefts, bring it to my attention immediately. It could have been a coordinated strike, and there was only a disturbance at the jeweler's because of the guards. You are dismissed. The ninja left the room in file. Even though Kyuubi was aware of the villagers' hatred for Naruto, he reasoned that when he tried to purchase something, they would at least take his money. I suppose it was lucky for Naruto that someone else purchased his food. Naruto would have gone hungry if he had been left to buy food. Before meeting with his team this morning, Kyuubi had intended to make a purchase, but he had been turned away from every clothes store he attempted to enter. And after witnessing the owner give him a glare, he had not ventured to try and enter the store with the weights. To keep from arousing suspicion, Kyuubi had to buy the items himself, but no one would sell to him. Maybe a henge. However, no, they would then assume that I had taken it from the person I had tricked. Bravo. Walking to the training field, an hour and a half late, Kyuubi thought back on his activities for the evening. The villagers had been slow to abandon the chase. It was clear that some of them had once trained as ninjas. Almost from the moment he had taken this body, things had gone wrong. He used to be the formidable Kyuubi no Kitsune, a demon so powerful that the greatest ninja in history had sacrificed their lives to keep him imprisoned. He now discovered that even when he did manage to defeat regular ninja, he could only muster up so much power for a brief period of time. He had become a ninja to maintain his disguise as Naruto after growing accustomed to it out of fear of being found out. When did Kyuubi become afraid? And after he'd done that, he had no choice but to steal in order to gain strength. He was no longer just a pitiful human being, he was also a thief, having been a ninja in a village he had attempted to destroy. And his brief career as a burglar had brought him to his current lowly position in society. Murderer. Nobody was aware of it, but luck alone was to blame. He'd overheard a discussion concerning the missing junin. The Anbu had not only located the body of Mizuki, they had also established a trail leading to it. All that had prevented the Anbu from conducting more research was the existence of the wild dogs. That was far too near. Though Kakashi had warned against it, Kyuubi had eaten breakfast. He thought he would be alright after taking some time to shop because he had been planning to go shopping for a while. He entered the training field's clearing. He noticed Sakura and Sasuke, but he didn't see Kakashi. He came to a halt and inhaled deeply. Thought Kyuubi, at least I kept my senses intact when I acquired this body. His keen sense of smell turned up no signs of Kakashi, and neither of his perceptive ears picked up anything but him and the 2 genin. He moved in the direction of the 2. Where were you, you baka? You were supposed to have been here an hour and a half ago, Sakura yelled. Kyuubi was not at all fazed. I was able to finally get this voice down. Is Kakashi here yet? But it requires so much focus to stay up. I really shouldn't say too much. Well, no, but... Kyuubi sat in the clearing by one of the posts. Kakashi was either dead, delayed by important work, or habitually late if he wasn't here an hour and a half after their scheduled meeting time. Kyuubi would always arrive at meetings Kakashi was attending at least an hour and a half late if he didn't have a valid reason. He just closed his eyes and leaned back against the post for the time being. He sensed Sakura's gaze on him. He examined his genjutsu's chakra. It was the best he could get. He had eyes that were just slightly darker than Naruto's. She couldn't have missed that, surely. Kyuubi furrowed his brow. Perhaps she was just strange. There was nothing for it but to let himself drift off to sleep. Staring at Naruto was Sakura. He was so different now from the first time she had met him. She recalled the days when he used to play practical jokes, constantly grinning, laughing, and yelling that he was going to be Hokage. He never cared how many people laughed at him. He always did what he felt like doing, similar to dressing in vivid orange. Sakura had never understood Naruto's deep affinity for oranges. Despite her lack of knowledge, she was aware that Naruto had no parents and that the Hokage had always purchased his food and clothes. She questioned how he expected to be a good ninja wearing such gaudy attire. She asked the question aloud, not even thinking about it. "Why do you always wear orange clothes, Naruto?" Naruto remained silent. Sakura took a closer look and saw that he was asleep. She could recall the times when he would have leapt at the chance to speak with Sakura-chan. She could still clearly recall his outbursts at her about how much he liked the color orange, how delicious ramen was, and anything else he could think of. However, his outbursts had gradually decreased in frequency. She had believed that he was beginning to show some common sense. He had started to nod off in class, though. And he spoke to fewer and fewer people, until his voice was hardly heard at all. The only times she could remember him speaking in the past year were when he had been asked a question or had gotten into trouble. Even then, he answered briefly and in a quiet voice. Sakura shrugged off whatever burden appeared to be resting on her shoulders. At least Naruto didn't cut her off when she was speaking with Sasuke-kun now. Sasuke. She realized that Naruto now resembled Sasuke-kun quite a bit. Sasuke didn't sleep as much, though. Sakura speculated that perhaps Naruto had found a suitable role model for himself. And one so attractive, too. Almost 2 hours after his departure, Kakashi entered the clearing. The team was just what he had expected it to be. Sakura was gazing at Sasuke, Naruto was dozing, and Sasuke was gloomy. Is it possible that I received a worse team? I have a fangirl, a bum, and a loner. Excellent. When Sakura heard Kakashi arrive, she leapt to her feet. You're 2 hours late. What's wrong with you? Oh, I was on my way here, when I noticed an elderly lady trying to cross the street. Liar. Sakura was screaming, waking Kyuubi. Is she this loud all the time? He pondered. Since joining her team, he had only been with her twice, and the first time, she had woken him up with loud enough shouting to wake the dead. Kyuubi stood up, realizing that Kakashi had arrived and that everyone else had now stood. I'm glad you're all here. Today, we will be doing a survival test. But Kakashi. Sensei, we did lots of those in the academy, Sakura moaned. But this one will be harder, and if you fail, you will be sent back to the academy. What? Kakashi waited for the ringing in his ears to stop. He pulled out 2 bells, each attached to a string, and inserted the ends of the strings into his belt. Yes, don't be surprised. The final examination you took tested your ability to use techniques. This test will determine your ability to use them in a combat situation. Your goal, he said, is to get a bell by noon, using any means necessary. Those who get a bell will pass. Those who do not will be sent back to the academy. Sakura said, but sensei, there are only 2 bells. Kakashi took out an alarm clock, who knows where he had been keeping it, and placed it on one of the 3 posts in the clearing. Yes. So at least one of you will be going back to the academy. This clock will go off at noon. Now try and get the bells, starting now. Without any delay, Sakura and Sasuke jumped into the forest to hide. Kyuubi simply stood there, staring at Kakashi without making any eye contact. A junin is Kakashi. We are female, hardly. If I use my power, I might be able to get a bell, but there must be a catch to this. Theoretically, none of us should be allowed to come in contact with him. Not one among us. Right, the goal of this is to foster teamwork. How come there are just 2 bells? Well, naturally, that is an attempt to prevent us from utilizing teamwork. Now that I see it. However, how can I persuade the other 2 to collaborate with me? Well, Kakashi awaited Naruto's retreat, however, he didn't. He simply stood there and gazed at him. What a strange child. Perhaps he's too tired or indolent to hide. Whatever. That is unimportant. Ika Paradise, Kakashi's favorite book, was brought out. He took a short while to read. Is Naruto not going to take action? He continues to look at me. Kakashi turned her back on Naruto and continued to read. The boy's gaze was searing into the back of his mind. Sure enough, Naruto was still staring when he turned around. I'm not going to be scared of a creepy genin. What's wrong with his eyes, too? I believe they are flawed in some way. Kyuubi startled out of his reverie upon realizing Kakashi was examining his eyes closely. Even though Kakashi was only 10 feet away, if he saw the genjutsu, Kyuubi leapt into the woods in search of the other genin. Clearly, there's a problem with his eyes. It resembles genjutsu somewhat. Nevertheless, I doubt Naruto is even capable of genjutsu. How peculiar. Kakashi spun around, sensing something behind him, and caught a kunai between his middle and index fingers. Hello there, Sasuke. Sakura's red outfit was marginally less noticeable than Kyuubi's orange one, so Kyuubi had no trouble finding her. Whispering, "Hey, Sakura," he said. Sakura, a kunai in hand, spun to face him. "Oh, it's just you," she replied in a whisper. "Sakura, this is supposed to be a teamwork exercise. We need to work together with Sasuke to get the bells." "But Kakashi," Sensei said. "Ignore his words," Kyuubi growled. "That was just to make it less obvious." Sakura paused to reflect. "Yes, he is correct. How come I missed that?" Something was stirring back toward the clearing. With a nod, they retreated towards the clearing to observe the unfolding events. With a sly smile, Sasuke glared at Kakashi, who was towering over him as a junin. In addition to being at least a foot taller than Sasuke, Kakashi had also been buried up to his chin. Kakashi took his book back and started to read again. He had underestimated how much fun that had been. The boy clearly had talent, but for the purposes of this exercise, talent was irrelevant. Kakashi was seen by Sakura and Kyuubi standing close to Sasuke's head. Just in time to avoid Sakura's loud, "Sasuke-kun." Giving away their position, Kyuubi slapped a hand over her mouth. Sakura looked at Kyuubi shadily and realized why he'd done that. She devised a scheme to capture Sasuke and then have the three of them attack Kakashi because she was the most intelligent kunoichi in her class. She whispered the plan to Kyuubi quickly, and he tried to speak as little as possible, offering a few suggestions of his own. Kyuubi nodded as they came to an agreement on the plan and crept to the appointed spot. Once positioned, Sakura unleashed her fury. Kakashi was curious about the whereabouts of the other two genin. Perhaps they had made the decision to go. He would wait until noon, at the very least, to be certain. He kept reading his book and grinned when he heard Sasuke try to climb back up on the ground. Sakura erupted from the forest's edge and ran towards Sasuke, exclaiming, "Sasuke-kun! Sasuke-kun! Are you alright?" Kakashi gave an eye roll. Had he anticipated that, or had he anticipated that? He moved in Sakura's direction, where she was working feverishly to extract Sasuke. Sensing something was following him, Kakashi sidestepped and pivoted. Not even a second had passed since Kakashi had been where Naruto stood. Kakashi grinned. Evidently, the boy had hoped to capitalize on Sakura's outburst too. Kakashi sidestepped to avoid a kunai from Sakura and then sidestepped once more to avoid a blow from Naruto. Kakashi's gaze expanded. Sakura was just acting dramatic, or did she simply notice, while digging, an opportunity? Glancing toward the three genin in the center of the clearing, Kakashi retreated to the forest's edge. After Naruto and Sakura had completed extracting Sasuke, they started chatting in low voices. Kakashi grinned. They may have mastered the collaborative aspect, but they remain conspicuous by their actions. It's time to move quickly. Just in time to avoid getting hit, a kunai shot past Kakashi from behind. He looked in the direction it had come from. The three genin started tossing him kunai, so he leapt out of the way. Maybe a kunai trap. Suddenly, his instincts told him to move, and Kakashi sidestepped to avoid a kunai that was thrown from a different direction. What was the number of traps they set? Alternatively, perhaps one of them is a bunshin, so that the third can toss kunai from the trees. Though he was unsure, Kakashi debated opening his Sharingan to make sure. They're merely genin. I can't be so harsh with them. At least twice as many kunai as the three genin in the clearing were hurling started to fly out of the forest at that same moment. Kakashi maneuvered to get closer to the genin in the center by dodging here and there. Since normal replications lacked a physical form and were unable to unearth Sasuke, whom he knew to be real, he knew that at least two of them were real. Abruptly, Naruto bolted from his clearing position directly towards Kakashi. Kakashi grinned. This child is oblivious to the dangers ahead. I'll just sidestep now, Kakashi said, suddenly realizing that the genin were hurling their kunai around Naruto rather than at him in an attempt to prevent Kakashi from sidestepping. Glancing back, he saw that the only kunai not hemming him in toward Naruto were those directly behind him. He was unable to avoid those kunai as they were coming straight at him. Kakashi thought, Naruto is going to hate me for this. Taking Naruto by the arm, he spun him around so that the kunai behind him could use him as a shield. Just before the kunai struck, Naruto vanished in a cloud of smoke, much to Kakashi's amazement, allowing 5 of them to lodge themselves in Kakashi's chest. Kakashi was so stunned by Naruto's disappearance and the agony of having multiple kunai lodged in his torso that he was unaware Sasuke was approaching from behind until the very last second. When he felt a tiny tug on his belt and looked down to see that the bells were gone, he turned and deflected Sasuke's punch and the subsequent kick. Sakura laughed and threw a bell to Naruto, who had emerged from the forest. By now, she was certain that this was a team building activity, so she wasn't concerned about Sasuke failing. Sasuke withdrew his blow and bided his time. Kakashi stood in awe of these 3 genin's labors. Well, it looks like you guys figured out what the real goal of this test was, so I guess you pass. Let's meet here at 8 o'clock in 2 days. Now excuse me, I have to go see a doctor. Kakashi then disappeared in a puff of smoke. Sakura sprinted towards Sasuke. Great job, Sasuke. Hey, do you want to go to lunch with me to celebrate? No, well, okay then. Naruto, I guess we could. When she turned, she saw that Naruto had vanished from view. How did he get there? Sasuke had started walking back toward Konoha when she jogged to catch up with him. Can I walk back with you, at least, Sasuke? Whatever. Sakura laughed heartily. Kyuubi leapt from one tree to another, returning to his usual training ground. Despite the fact that Team 7 had passed the test, Kyuubi sensed that Kakashi was being reserved. Whatever had been used to bury Sasuke was the only method the Junin had. Kakashi had only used taijutsu other than that. I must become more powerful. I must be able to protect myself from these people in case I am ever discovered. He reached the training area and paused in front of the posts that appeared to be at each location. And I still have to buy those clothes and weights. But nobody will give me a sale. I have to figure out how. Kyuubi started running toward the field's eastern boundary. He would simply have to run faster if he wasn't yet able to use weights. Naruto's eyes opened. Though it was dark, he could just make out the shapes of doors along the hallway. Wiping the dirt that had been on the floor, Naruto got to his feet. Excellent. I'm not sure where I am. Naruto surveyed his surroundings. Although this place seemed strangely familiar, he didn't recognize it. Then he saw the light in front of him. Alternatively, a faint orange gleam. Is this place on fire? Nothing is smelling good to me. Naruto turned and headed for the light that emanated from the corner at one end of the hallway. In this darkness, the other end was so far away that it was invisible. Leaning against the wall, Naruto peered around the bend. There was this enormous room, mostly occupied by a cage that was nearly as big. Naruto saw a big, glowing figure inside the cage. It was a painting he had once seen in an old history book. Once, long ago, when he was still a bothersome child, he had looked through the book. It was in the forbidden section of the library, which was the only reason he looked. The image's caption said, Kyuubi no Kitsune. Naruto gazed at the enormous fox with 9 tails. It appeared to be working on something. It appeared as though it was gazing past the ceiling as it fixed its gaze there. Chakra extended beyond the cage and around an additional corner. Naruto emerged into the daylight. The fox remained silent. Naruto trailed the chakra as it turned the bend. The chakra came to an end in the seat of a large chair. Naruto strolled back towards the cage, containing room. The fox was perfectly still. Naruto cast his gaze to the ceiling. It had nothing on it. He turned to face the fox again. It had not moved from its intense stare at the ceiling to ignore him. Or perhaps it simply failed to notice him. Naruto raised his head again. He attempted to look past the ceiling. He had an odd feeling that he was growing outside the building's boundaries. The room disappeared. He watched as trees rushed by. He heard his breath come in ragged breaths and saw his hands pump at his sides. He didn't feel anything, though. It was not a run for him. His head remained frozen in place as he attempted to glance down at his body. His body ran and ran until it came to rest against a big tree. He extended his hand to touch the tree, then quickly spun around and started running away. Just by listening to his breathing, he knew he should be exhausted. Still, he didn't feel worn out. When he noticed the tree moving, he knew there ought to be a breeze. However, he didn't. His body felt under the control of something else. He felt a strange constriction as he attempted to pull himself back into the spot he had previously occupied, like he was being forced into a box that was too small for him. He was back in the enormous room with the cage all of a sudden. He turned to face Kyuubi, the fox demon. It continued to gaze intently at the ceiling. The body is under Kyuubi's control. But where am I if not in my body? Once more, Naruto peered past the ceiling. His body continued to race. How was he supposed to proceed? Observing life in this way didn't bother him. Actually, it might be better than living it. He could return to the strange room if something or someone showed up and he didn't want to hear their hurtful words. If Kyuubi, at least, I believe it's Kyuubi, does nothing but run, this is going to get really boring. Trees kept rushing past him. Naruto let out a sigh. He sighed, at least, as much as one can when one is without a body. Kyuubi whirled, pulling out a kunai. There was an individual present. Observing him. Their breathing had been audible to him, but he was unable to pinpoint its source. He inhaled deeply. Nothing. He paid close attention. Nothing. Even with his enhanced senses, he was unable to sense anything. However, a proficient ninja could be able to conceal their presence as indicators. Why did he suddenly stop? Kyuubi ducked to the side and looked the other way at the sound of the voice. There was nobody present. Once more, he was unable to identify the source of the sound. To the air, he said, "Who's there?" A hush descended upon the training area. Kyuubi launched a kunai in the direction of what sounded like a whistle. A small bird, only guilty of trying to sing, fell to the ground after being skewered by the blade. Kyuubi stiffened his body, anticipating any sign of a second presence. Nobody could remain silent indefinitely. Naruto became aware of the situation. Though he wasn't the most intelligent ninja, he could see that Kyuubi would react each time he attempted to make a sound. Kyuubi might be able to hear him. He chose to investigate this theory. Compared to dealing with the villagers, this is far superior. With a frown, Naruto expressed his realization that his true desire was to become friends with Kyuubi. Though maybe not as nice as having no friends, a demon. I hate my life, man. Kyuubi, hello. Kyuubi winced. How on earth could someone have worked it out? His eyes darted all around, but he saw no one. Are you unable to solve it? My voice sounds familiar, doesn't it? While it did sound vaguely familiar, Kyuubi was unable to identify the person. He questioned, "Who are you?" Then it dawned on him. My voice sounds exactly like his. By extension, Naruto. In the physical form. You get the idea, though not really. This might come in handy, Kyuubi thought. I can act more humanely by using Naruto. Unless he makes an attempt to regain bodily control. Since I have to reach far out of the seal to reach the point of control, I hardly have any grip on my control at all. I'll be stuck back there if he decides to seize command. How can I get him to stop bothering with the chair? Perhaps if I... You do know that I can hear everything you say? Can you hear what I'm thinking? Indeed? Then I suppose all I can do is beg for permission to use your body. Yes. Can I then? Kyuubi had unattainable dreams. This child might relapse into a coma or something similar. Perhaps he would. Yes. Still, I think this arrangement is better. Did I understand you correctly? Kyuubi found it hard to believe he was so fortunate. Did I just hear you say what I thought you said? Indeed, I did. I don't really want to go out there anymore because everyone thinks I'm bad. Besides, nothing too terrible has been done by you thus far, and it's been... How much time have I been away? For 3 days. Right. Before you ask, if you'd like, I can assist you in perfecting your human act. Not that I'm the most qualified person to ask, but there's really no one else I can ask. Yes. How about Naruto? Is there a way I can purchase items? I need to get some non-orange clothes and weights. Why is orange a bad color? What's wrong with orange? Is what I take it to mean. It would practically blind any skilled ninja before I could sneak up on them. I see. Oh, yeah. When you tried to purchase the items, how did you behave? Similar to any other client. When I attempted to enter, the proprietors became frightened and told me to leave. When I told them to shove off, they decided that was reason enough to attack me, and, well, that is not going to work. In fact, you should basically beg and offer to pay more. All I've ever really purchased is ramen, and the two from Ichiraku. There, the proprietor appeared to like me, so. Grovel, you anticipate that Kyuubi no Kitsune, the great demon, will beg for clothes and chunks of heavy metal. Yes, if I may try it, that is. I could take charge of the body and take care of you. Kyuubi took a moment to think about that. After that, would you be able to give up control of the body? ... I'm not sure. I have no idea how I ended up here in the first place. However, there's only one way to find out. Kyuubi considered that. Was his pride worth losing his one and only chance at freedom? It's not worthwhile. I'm unable to. Kyuubi then imagined himself groveling before sultry store owners in order to purchase their wares at a premium price. Put that away, we'll give it a shot. It's now a little after noon. Shall we leave right away? To control the body, you'll have to go sit in that chair. Kyuubi, what will we do with the money? I never had a lot, and definitely not enough to purchase decent clothes and weights. That's already taken care of by me. Go take a seat in the chair before I begin to second guess my choice. Now believing the cage to be his mind, Naruto went back to the room with it. He turned the corner and approached the chair. This time, the reddish-orange chakra withdrew as he approached. Sat in the chair was Naruto. Nothing took place. What's not right? Why is nothing taking place? Then something occurred to Naruto. He attempted to look past the ceiling. As he stepped back into reality, he felt that odd sensation of expansion. Awakened, Naruto rubbed his head. The head had struck a rock and the body had hit the ground when Kyuubi had given up control. Why do I consider my head to be the head? Whatever. If we ever have to make that transition again, kid, we better work on it. If I could revert the body's control back to you. Please don't remind me. Now move. I must teach this body to withstand the attacks of any foolish ninja. The money you mentioned is somewhere. It's beneath your bed's mattress. Perhaps you could purchase multiple weight levels so that we can raise the weight as our bodies get stronger. Naruto gave a small smile. Perhaps in the end he would have a friend. If it was a demon, even so. Behind him, the morning sun shone as Naruto strolled along. It was strange to walk around Konoha at this time. He felt more at home in the shadowy passageways of his mind than he did outside, even though he was still as alive as he had ever been. It was difficult to be normal, especially after learning that he had been sealed with a nine-tailed demon fox. While he had graciously described the events leading up to the attack on Konoha, Kyuubi had remained silent about his motivations. It was almost miraculous that he was able to act normal after everything that had happened to him recently, especially since Kyuubi was conversing with him as he was walking. As I mentioned earlier, kid, we should gather multiple weight levels and a few black clothes, at minimum. In this manner, when we're on missions, we'll have a good chance of ambushing people covertly. Yes, you have already told me everything. It was not at all difficult for Naruto to learn how to speak with Kyuubi while he was out here once he had figured out how to do so mentally. And why do we say, we? That's where I anticipate spending the majority of my time, so. Yes, but you'll have to come out if we ever need to play really human. So that we won't be sitting ducks when we're acting, you'll also need to train. We might also need to temporarily switch places in other circumstances. Thus, we will do it. Right. Naruto strolled through Konoha's streets in search of a decent clothing store. If the owner could be persuaded to sell, he knew where they would purchase the weights. Naruto approached a store he thought might be of interest when he thought of the scene Kyuubi had made here the day before. He would need to locate a different store to purchase the apparel. He entered after spotting another clothes store. Hey, kid, what the heck are you doing here? Did I mention you could enter? The customers in line were startled when the owner of the store yelled from behind the counter. My apologies, sir. All I have to buy is some clothes. I didn't intend to annoy you. I'll pay more to avoid causing you any inconvenience. Kyuubi stood in his cage, watching as Naruto groveled and apologized. It's fortunate that I let him speak first. That's not how I would allow someone to speak to me. He kept watching as Naruto haggled with the store owner, who granted him permission to shop in exchange for paying twice as much for everything. Kyuubi started pointing out the items of clothing they wanted to purchase when the kid eventually started perusing the racks of clothes. Those black pants, 3 pairs of them. 2 black boot pairs. There were 3 or 4 of those long-sleeved black shirts. Yes, all things must be black. No, I don't think we'll ever have to cover up with bright orange stuff. No, I don't believe that being orange would scare them. All they would think of you is foolish. Obtain 2 sets of those gloves made of black leather. Plus 2 vests in black, and 3 of those ebony skullcaps. I am aware that they didn't resemble masks. They must be wrapped around your head. Solely your eyes are visible. In this manner, you won't need to expend chakra on the jutsu I employed to obtain the money. How do you do jutsu? Later, I'll tell you about it. How come you dare call me a small-time thief? While you're at it, grab 2 black cloaks as well. No, they aren't very helpful in a fight, but you might need them in a cold or wet environment. By that, what do you mean? How could you know that I sound like your mother when you don't even know what her voice was like? Go buy the dumb clothes, please. I believe we have everything we need here. While Naruto purchased the apparel, Kyuubi said nothing. The store owner gave Naruto a glare and threatened to keep the profits from charging twice for the clothing. The clothes were put on Naruto's bed. He was now expected to purchase weights. Kyuubi hadn't attempted to purchase them yesterday, at least. Kit, what do you mean by that? Naruto nearly burst out laughing. A friend was a friend, even though Kyuubi wasn't the best kind and most likely only cooperated because he was scared of losing the body. He hadn't had any friends before. Naruto was in the best mood he had felt in a very long time. He pondered about his past life as he strolled down the street. He was despised by all. Really, he had no grounds to blame them. Since they had suffered so much at the hands of Kyuubi, they simply assumed that he was Kyuubi when it was sealed in him. Entering the blacksmith's shop, he made a purchase of some weights. Kyuubi observed Naruto making small talk with the blacksmith. He saw how the blacksmith finally consented to create the weights on the condition that Naruto pay 3 times as much. Naruto was instructed by the smith to return the following day for the first set and a week later for the remaining ones. After giving the money to the clerk, Naruto left the store. Naruto, you didn't have to pay that much, it was already too expensive for them. If I hadn't agreed to pay that much, he wouldn't have agreed to sell at all. Whatever. Upon their return to Naruto's residence, Naruto placed the weights on the bed. Here goes nothing, and I'm not sure if I can pull this off. Naruto focused on getting back into the dimly lit room. His bedroom turned hazy, and he experienced a sensation similar to being crushed by gravity, only without any pain. As his vision cleared, he discovered that he was still seated on the peculiar throne in the dark. As he stood up, a mass of orange-red chakra filled the chair's seat. He had returned. Kyuubi retreated inside the cage and used his chakra to sense around the edge. As soon as Naruto got up from the chair, Kyuubi took charge. He used his chakra to fill the seat and peered out of his prison and into the realm of mortals. He had returned. The progress he had made in his training pleased Kyuubi. He'd used the first set of weights as soon as he'd picked them up, and his practice sessions with his shadow clones were starting to show the results. It was time to move on to the second set of weights. He had the extras at home. Kyuubi had already doubled his previous speed. Of course, that was because he was practicing techniques while running through the forest for almost all of his waking hours, and he only needed to give this body a few hours each day to rest. The body was becoming more capable of using chakras, though not as quickly as Kyuubi would have preferred. Additionally, he was picking up human customs from Naruto, who appeared to be incredibly kind to the demon. I suppose he was lonely after all. Kyuubi made his way to the Hokage's office so he could meet with his group. Today, they were meant to receive another mission. Hopefully, it will be as simple as locating that dumb cat. After that, I can resume my training. He checked his eyes, instinctively, for genjutsu before going into the office. It felt good and was still there. Kyuubi entered the workspace. Naruto. You're going to be an hour late. You don't give a damn, Sakura gave him a scream. Kyuubi surveyed his surroundings. Why is she getting so worked up when Kakashi isn't even here yet? Women. After about 15 minutes. As soon as the door opened, Kakashi slouched inside. Sorry guys, but there was an old lady who needed help carrying some groceries, and... No there wasn't, you crazy, ahem. Sakura turned to look at the Hokage, who was grinning wryly at her. I'm sorry, Hokage. Sama. It's alright. Team 7, now that you are all here, I can give you your mission, the Sandaime said with a pointed glance at Kakashi. You will be receiving a C-ranked mission because there haven't been many requests for missions lately. Sasuke grinned. I can now put my skills to the test against other ninja. Then I'll know how much longer I have to train in order to kill Itachi. Sakura grinned, glad she had been given a mission other than locating cats. Inside, Sakura cried aloud about winning Sasuke over. Kyuubi looked forward. This suggests that the mission will most likely take longer than a few hours. I must exercise. I have to be able to protect myself and continue to live. You are to escort a man, Tazuna, to Wave Country, Sarutobi went on. He will be safe from highwaymen and bandits with your protection. You will stay with him until a project he is working on is finished after you arrive. While you are there, you will be guarding him against thieves and thugs. After a month or when his project is finished, you are welcome to come back. Your meals will be handled by Tazuna. You're heading out early tomorrow. Rejected. Team 7 was waiting for Tazuna outside the gates. It had only been 5 minutes late for even Kakashi. Kyuubi didn't like what the mission was about. I must exercise, at least it's just bandits and that kind of thing to worry about. However, it interferes with my training schedule. While we're out there, at least I can work on improving my speed and endurance. Kyuubi checked to make sure the second set of weights was securely in place with his own hands. Naruto had mentioned that since no one on the team knew about the weights, Kyuubi could practice endurance and speed by acting frenzied and running around. He could at least train, even though it would make him look ridiculous. He saw a man walking by wearing run-down clothing. The man was walking while sipping from a bottle. He approached them, but rather than going by, he came to a stop. The man said, "Are you guys ready to go?" "Yes," replied Kakashi. "Let's go." Kyuubi scowled. Must we escort this man? How in the world was he going to pay for a C-rated mission? Behind Kakashi and the man who appeared to be Tazuna was Kyuubi. This mission was going to take a long time. Kyuubi circled the group while running. He dashed into the woods and emerged again. He cleared Sasuke and Kakashi with a leap. Tazuna and the other members of Team 7 chose to ignore him after the first hour of this. Sasuke thought, the dead last must be looking forward to the mission. As they strolled along, Kakashi and Tazuna talked about the enormous bridge project Tazuna was working on. They came across a puddle. Kyuubi came to a stop. Something smelled to him. What odor is that? There seems to have been two people here a short while ago based on the smell. I can also smell metal, as in the stuff used in kunai. Ninjas? Perhaps there are others out there on a mission than us. Kyuubi hurried through the puddle as he ran to catch up with the group. Silently, two shapes emerged from the puddle. The first clenched his head and swore under his breath. They both followed Team 7 in silence after that. Kyuubi noticed the two figures sneaking up on them as they were running around the group. Whispering, two behind, he ran towards Kakashi and then proceeded to run around Team 7 as if nothing were wrong. The fact that Naruto had discovered the stalkers pleased Kakashi. Kakashi had seen the puddle that shouldn't have existed because there hadn't been any rain, but he wasn't sure how many there were. Naruto may not be as shallow as I initially believed. Aren't you excited to be on a C-class mission, Sasuke? Sakura inquired. Sasuke remained silent. Sakura scowled as inner Sakura cried out that genuine love would overcome all obstacles. Kakashi was suddenly surrounded by spiked chains as two cloaked men materialized on either side of him. Both of them tugged, tearing the junin to pieces. The two genin and Tazuna were then attacked by them. Kyuubi was frolicking through the woodland. After drawing a kunai for each hand, Sasuke lowered himself into a crouch. With the intention of trapping the genin inside, the cloaked men threw their chains around them. Sakura pulled Tazuna to clear the path, and Sasuke lunged directly at their attackers. For a while, the two men fought Sasuke by swinging their gauntlets and spiked chains and avoiding kunai. Sasuke was unable to touch them, but they were likewise unable to touch him. Sasuke leapt back abruptly and quickly formed seals. He put his mouth to his mouth and blasted a great ball of fire at the men in cloaks. Sasuke stopped, and all he could see was burned earth. He was flanked by the two men who descended from above. Their chains were prepared. Sasuke prepared for what was to come. Then he witnessed a throng of Narutos emerge from all sides of the forest. Though there were too many to stop, the men launched their chains in an attempt to thwart the attack. Seeing their diversion, Sasuke used his kunai to stab them both in the back. Then two Naruto clones threw flying punches, sending the men flying back into a big tree. They heard a voice that was both chilling and cheery ask, "Did you just hurt Sasuke-kun?" before they could leave. After Sakura cried incoherently at the two men, Kakashi emerged from the trees and remarked, "That's enough, Sakura." "Greetings, Kakashi." "Sensei, you're not dead." Sakura let out a squeal. Obviously. Sakura gave a face. "Fail. You guys performed admirably. Well done, Naruto, on the sneak attack. You did a great job, Sasuke, taking advantage of Naruto's attack. You made them unconscious for us, Sakura. Well done, everyone." Tazuna, Kakashi turned to confront the smirky bridge constructor. "You have some explaining to do." Kakashi let out a sigh. After a few glares, Tazuna had conceded yesterday that he had known ninja might be after him, but the deception had been necessary because his village could not afford a Class B mission. After Tazuna guilted him into accepting the mission by implying that they could leave the elderly man alone if they so desired, Kakashi made the decision to go on. Once more, Kakashi sighed. The fact that they had to search for ninja was bad enough, but did Naruto really intend to spend the entire mission sprinting around like a speeding squirrel? Of course, it might even avert an ambush. More likely, though, was that Naruto would run into an ambush while in the woods. However, Kakashi was against Naruto returning to his previous habit of circling the group while running. In addition to being bothersome, Naruto constantly raised a cloud of dust around them. Tazuna was disturbed by it as well, believing that a child of that age shouldn't have that much energy. Naruto. The boy dashed out of the forest and came to a stop beside Kakashi. "What is it, Kakashi?" "Sensei?" he inquired, stepping into step with the junin. "I understand that you might be overly energetic and that this is boring, but you need to control yourself, Naruto. We might require that energy in the event that we encounter more ninja." "But Kakashi." "Sensei, without a but, simply stop." Kyuubi was furious. He was not only on an elongated mission where he might encounter individuals who could murder him, but he was also prohibited from training. "You know, back then, you sounded like a whiny brat." Additionally, Kyuubi had to endure mocking remarks from his host, who appeared happier than she had in memory. "You cannot make jokes about a human like me. I am a demon. I would tear you limb from limb if I could have my body back. You would run out of things before you could fill a jewelry box." Naruto and Kyuubi had, for the most part, grown accustomed to one another. When it came to human matters, Naruto would give advice and highlight details that Kyuubi might have missed. Though Kyuubi saw little use in it, he agreed to listen to any advice Naruto occasionally had because he had never learned how to read emotions from tones and expressions. They were developing a system to cooperate during battle. Kyuubi would focus on a single target, and Naruto would observe his surroundings from the comfort of his own imagination. In the brief time they had spent with the demon brothers, they had only had the opportunity to test it out once. And, for those unaware, those two ninjas were from the previous chapter. It appeared to function fairly well, but if given the opportunity, they would continue to train. As seemed to happen frequently on this mission, Naruto would tease Kyuubi when there was nothing to do, to which Kyuubi would reply with venom. Naruto would keep teasing, apparently finding this amusing. Kyuubi generally only retaliated in an attempt to maintain his honor as a formidable demon, not because he particularly disliked Naruto. "However, you do not possess a body? I have to lend you mine. We'll see if you still have your annoying sense of humor once you step inside my cage." "Really, from out here, I'm just fine. Get down." A massive sword flew overhead and lodged itself in a tree across the clearing, forcing Kyuubi to crouch low to the ground. Leaping onto the sword was a man. He had wraps around his hands and lower face, and his clothes were light blue, baggy pants, and dark brown shoes. On the outside, Kakashi didn't seem anxious, but he was completely aware of his surroundings. "Zabuza, demon of the mist." Tazuna and the genin both stood up. "Who's Zabuza?" Sakura inquired. "He's one of the hidden mist's missing nin. Guard Tazuna, you three. I will deal with Zabuza." "How honorable. The legendary copy. Nin will watch out for his brats." Tazuna was suddenly joined by Zabuza. "Still not moving quickly enough. I haven't even been able to see him move during our entire training session. It's not even been 2 weeks during this whole time. Oh my god. Try and protect them from this." Swordsman Zabuza swung. Or attempted to, only to find Kakashi was clinging to it. While Sasuke and Kyuubi positioned themselves around Kakashi and Zabuza, Sakura dragged Tazuna away. The two seemed to be fighting non-stop, and the genin watched in amazement. Zabuza continued to swing his enormous sword as if it were weightless, but Kakashi always managed to dodge it like it was made of molasses. Kunai, which Kakashi swung at, were either wasted on a water clone or blocked by the sword. Neither was able to deal the other a serious blow. Zabuza suddenly leapt up onto a tree branch. "This time, I'll let you go, but that bridge won't be constructed. I won't be so lenient with you the next time if you persist." Zabuza bolted into the surrounding woods. Late the next night, the group reached Tazuna's house without any further mishap. They shared meals with Tazuna, Tsunami, his daughter, and, briefly, Inari, her son. Midway through the meal, Inari stormed off, saying they were all going to die. Sakura went to bed after Sasuke declined to take a stroll with her. Soon after, Sasuke went to bed. Kyuubi retired to his cot and heard the household noises. He crept out of the house to train after making sure that everyone had gone to sleep. He made the decision to approach things a little differently because he hadn't trained in the previous 2 days. Running through the forest while facing off against shadow clones. The sound of techniques or the clang of kunai might have been heard back in the house, so it would have to be limited to taijutsu exclusively. Kyuubi trained until light appeared in the horizon. Returning in a hurry to the house, He pretended to sleep until Sasuke arrived to wake him. "Hey, darling, stand up. Today, we have to watch over Tazuna at the bridge." Kyuubi ran out over the bridge. Efforts by Sasuke to persuade him to remain hidden and keep an eye out for the Zabuza had been fruitless. Ultimately, Sasuke decided to keep an eye on the area around the shore, leaving Naruto to watch over the bridge's edge. Hours went by. After eating lunch together in silence, the two genin went back to their posts. A mist started to encircle the bridge. Before Sasuke heard a man laughing directly behind him, he didn't give it any thought. "Kakashi can't protect you now, brat." As Naruto heard someone land next to him while running around the edge of the misted bridge, he noticed a dark shape following behind. He turned to face the figure, stopping. "I do not wish to hurt you, but Zabuza.san cannot allow this bridge to be finished." Sasuke whirled around. The mist demon, Zabuza, was standing there. Sakura and Kakashi were working on a training exercise at Tazuna's house. On the opposite side of the bridge stood Naruto. "I can't let him win," Sasuke thought. "In order to exact revenge on my clan, I have to live. I have to be able to defeat this guy if I want to defeat my brother." Through the mist, Zabuza created a seal that Sasuke was unable to recognize and disappeared. Sasuke pivoted in a circle. Nothing. He turned to face behind him. Nothing. What is his location? I can't allow him to surprise me, I must be prepared. Nevertheless, Sasuke was unable to locate the mist.nin anywhere. It was going to be hard work this. Kyuubi turned to face the unusual boy. Is it a girl, or what? All the nin did was stare back. They both remained motionless. Haku, the ninja, tightened his muscles. The boy would bolt, either charging in or out of sight. It was okay if the boy took off running, however, if he attacked. "Are you a boy or a girl?" Haku winced. People dared to question his manliness everywhere he went. Nobody would ever ask him how he became so strong or where he learned how to do things, even though he would show up and knock people around. "Are you really a man?" And, "Are you a boy or a girl?" was the constant question. He detested that. This child was not going anywhere. Although Haku had no intention of killing the boy, he would punish him for his foolish question. Kyuubi grinned in her head. The kid had been correct. Naturally, I was correct. Here, I am the human. I am aware of it. For now, Kyuubi disregarded the voices in his head. With his innocent sounding jab, he had diverted the nin's attention, allowing him to launch an attack. Kunai sprayed out as Kyuubi lashed out. Despite being preoccupied, the nin avoided the projectiles with such speed that Kyuubi could hardly see it. Oh no, that can't be favorable. Just as Kyuubi turned around, he saw the nin throw several senbon towards him from behind. Though it was with much less grace than the mist.nin had displayed, Kyuubi managed to avoid them. The nin nearly moved out of the way with a lazy gait as Kyuubi leapt at him, driving several of the needles into his back. The voice of the obnoxious human in the back of his mind, along with the pain, were silenced by the demon. Kyuubi created a well-known seal, and 12 clones materialized. With both hands gripping kunai, they charged the gender-neutral nin at once. Before the clones could get to the nin, they were all dispelled by firing senbon in a circle around themselves. Kyuubi scowled. He had not attacked. I might be mistaken about how difficult this is. Once more disregarding the clamoring voice inside his head, Kyuubi called 12 more clones to the battlefield. These clones threw kunai at a distance, but Haku deftly sidestepped them and swiftly eliminated them all. Kyuubi became aware of how swift this opponent was. The demon was obviously nowhere near as fast as he should have been. Naruto didn't hear his voice until the nin charged at him and started throwing senbon. "You moron! Remove your weights." Sasuke was gasping for air. His target would vanish into the water every time he believed he had the upper hand. How many water clones could one person create? Sasuke thought, apparently a lot, as he snatched kunai from yet another melting clone. He had run out of kunai a while ago, so he had to rescue them from fallen clones and the bridge's deck. It felt very clear to Sasuke that Zabuza was playing tricks on him. Sasuke sidestepped, just missing getting sliced in half by that enormous sword. He stabbed his attacker in the back, not noticing that it also turned to puddle. Sasuke was unable to continue like this for very long. Zabuza launched another attack, 4 images of himself convergent on Sasuke's position, one from each side, as if he could read Sasuke's thoughts. In an attempt to avoid being cut down by the swords, Sasuke hurled his final 3 kunai at 3 of the pictures before leaping into the air. One picture got hit in the shoulder and flew across the deck. However, the other 3 leapt to follow him. With his last weapon, the Fuma Shuriken, Sasuke turned and readied himself to block the swords with it. Rather, a different figure, possibly the actual Zabuza, appears behind him and uses the flat of his blade to slap Sasuke across the bridge. With a forceful landing, Sasuke tumbled towards the narrow wall near the bridge's edge. His arms and legs were immobile, and he was experiencing severe back pain whenever he moved them. Where his shuriken had landed was a mystery to him. All he could do was watch as Zabuza emerged from the mist and approached him, carrying that enormous sword on one shoulder. I was waiting on your teacher to arrive. A rematch was something I was eagerly anticipating. I assumed he would be interested in our session here. But since it clearly didn't, maybe your demise will be more successful than this meaningless conflict. Zabuza lifted his blade. Sasuke prepared for the conclusion. It kicked Kyuubi over the bridge. Naruto's remark had taken him by surprise, causing him to react too late. How did I overlook the weights? Naturally, of course. I should have been faster than this, I knew. Kyuubi unwrapped the rope holding his weights and let them fall to the ground. His weights were specially made so that he could remove them all with a single knot. In this manner, he could remove them mid-fight, as of right now. A loud metallic clang accompanied the weights landing, shattering chunks of concrete. Kyuubi realized all of a sudden how heavy those weights had been. It was as if he had to hold on to something to prevent himself from floating away. He withdrew a kunai and lunged towards Haku. Kyuubi's slash was narrowly avoided by the mist.nin, who did not display the typical flourish. Skimming the surface of the bridge, Kyuubi pursued his opponent, who was not specific about gender. Haku came to a stop and pivoted. He had to come up with a plan now that he was safe from the boy's grasp. He was in need of. A fist slamming his mask against Haku's face broke his train of thought. Haku stumbled back a few feet. Then he recalled the words of Zabuza.san. Kill your opponent if he's tough. If not, we'll have to battle him once more. Don't be so flimsy that you jeopardize our security. Kyuubi witnessed the boy stand up and create an odd seal that he was unable to identify. All around him, long, flat sheets of ice formed from the rising water from the bridge. Then he witnessed Haku leap into one of the ice sheets that resembled mirrors. All of the sheets surrounding him suddenly displayed pictures of Haku. With a sly smile, Kyuubi threw a kunai into the mirror that Haku had gone into. It broke. However, more water quickly rose and created a second sheet of ice, this one featuring a picture of Haku. Kyuubi noticed that every picture raised hands full of senbon. The pictures made the needles fly. Kyuubi noticed needles flying in all directions. There could only be one nin, as far as he was aware. And every now and then he could see a faint blur that had to be the nin. But right now, it was too much to consider. Kyuubi shielded his head from the falling senbon. They did not stop coming. The chill that spread from the numerous needles piercing him told Kyuubi they were made of ice, which the nin most likely created from the nearby water. Furthermore, given that they were currently in the ocean, Kyuubi started to feel fatigued. He didn't feel worn out. He experienced a calm form of somnolence. There was less pain from the needles. His vision darkened at the edges. Kyuubi wondered what was going on. In reality, he didn't care. All he wanted to do was go to bed. Kyuubi, you're going to die. Get over it quickly. I see. How charming. I suppose that what? For the few minutes that Naruto would require it, Kyuubi pushed as much of his own chakra into his body as it could handle. The bridge's concrete shook and cracked under his feet due to the sudden release of so much energy. Senbon protruded from his skin, and every wound he had recovered from left hardly a trace of their previous state. His genjutsu broke, exposing bloodshot eyes with reddish, orange irises and slitted pupils. His cheek whisker markings thickened and lengthened, resembling long claw marks running the length of his face. A fiery, orange-red chakra engulfed his entire being. Around Naruto's body, the chakra created a silhouette that looked a lot like a fox. Chakra. Made claws covered each hand. As the blonde boy miraculously recovered, Haku could only watch. All he could do was watch as the boy charged, yelling nonsensically. The beastly creature tore out his throat, and all he could do was fall. And as the boy started to eat him alive, all he could do was scream in silence. I was waiting on your teacher to arrive. A rematch was something I was eagerly anticipating. I assumed he would be interested in our session here. But since it clearly didn't, maybe your demise will be more successful than this meaningless conflict. Zabuza lifted his blade. Sasuke prepared for the conclusion. A gasp of pain sounded in front of him, but he couldn't quite place it. Is this the nature of death? Sasuke's eyes opened. Zabuza stood in front of him, his sword still raised above his head. Where his heart should have been, an arm protruded. The chakra in the hand glowed bright blue. Abruptly, the hand withdrew. The now dead body of Zabuza fell to the ground. The enormous sword dropped to one side. And Hitaki Kakashi was standing right behind Zabuza's corpse. Kakashi grinned, that little smile that you can only see in the corner of his eye. I apologize for being late. This time, for real. I ought not to have left Naruto and you to watch over the bridge by yourselves. Sasuke gave a grunt in return. I must go see how Naruto is doing. Sakura will look after you until I return Naruto to this place. Kasuke.kun. You're wounded. While Kakashi hurried to the end of the bridge, Sakura ran over and kneeled next to Sasuke. Sakura started fussing over Sak, who moaned. Energy must be restored. Need to eat. Kyuubi ripped into the Haku's still, warm corpse. Kyuubi. Give up. Naruto's request was ignored by the demon. Kyuubi, I understand that this is your first real experience with death, so you might be a little shaken, but if someone sees you, they might figure out what's going on. Kyuubi stopped. His thoughts gradually returned to normal. What if he was seen by someone? Kyuubi got to his feet and reduced the speed at which his chakra released to its usual level. He put the genjutsu over his eyes back on. Since his mask had obviously been taken off for eating, he pulled it back over his face. He then took a seat. I came close to death. And instead of just encountering ninja on missions, I might have been seen and pursued by them if that kid hadn't reminded me. Saying, thank you, is an option. I'm grateful, Naruto. I think we should go see how Sasuke is doing. This guy wasn't nearly as strong as Zabuza. Yes. I suppose that's true. Reluctantly, Kyuubi stood up and walked quickly in the direction of where Sasuke had been stationed. Kakashi ran in the direction of the bridge's end. Zabuza's only allies would be powerful ones, and any ninja foolish enough to wear orange. He used to wear orange, so a decent ninja could easily take him down. Kakashi then noticed Naruto pacing toward him. Naruto. The young man came to a halt. Kakashi gave him a glance. Blood was all over the place. Naruto's mask, pants, and black shirt were all covered in blood. It was dripping from his fingertips and off his chin. There were red prints on the floor from every step. Now, Naruto was dressed entirely in dark red. His clothes were ripped, with over a dozen holes in it in different places. Naruto. Are you okay? Kakashi hurried to ensure Naruto would be okay. With this much blood lost, the boy ought to be close to fainting by now. With a gravelly voice, Naruto answered, I'm fine, Kakashi, sensei. Kakashi let out a relieved sigh. On his very first mission as a sensei, he had been afraid of losing a student. Where is the nin you fought? Naruto gestured to his rear. You didn't let him get away? Naruto gave a disapproving shake of his head. Excellent, Naruto. Let's now try to figure out who was responsible for everything. Perhaps a note on the ninja's corpse. We can examine Zabuza's if not. Kyuubi remarked, you don't want to see the body. For a while, it was going to be harder to talk normally due to the recent release of so much chakra. We have to find out who was behind this, or this mission will have to continue until the bridge is finished. Kyuubi gave a grunt but remained silent. Kakashi started to move in the direction that Naruto had indicated. Come on, Naruto. Kakashi led the way, and Naruto trailed behind cautiously, fearing what the junin would find. Sakura completed bandaging Sasuke's final exposed wound. With a syrupy voice, she inquired, how are you feeling, Sasuke-kun? Sasuke gave a grunt in return. As Sakura opened her mouth to speak, she heard a large group of people approaching her. When she looked up, she saw a large group of armed men being led by a short man dressed in a black suit. When he saw her through the mist that was slowly clearing, the man stopped, and the other men stopped with him. The man said something. All right, what have we got going on here? A girl and a ninja with injuries. Hee. If the foolish demon was unable to kill you, at least he made you weaker so that my men could kill you. He gestured to those to his left. You guys look after these two. Look around the rest of the bridge, you people. Plant the explosives after you have eliminated everyone there. After he was done talking, the men rushed over to the other side of the bridge. Standing where he was, the man in the black suit addressed the other members of his team who were approaching Sakura. Death the boy, and interact with the girl however you please. I'd like to watch this. Kakashi looked at the scene in front of him, horrified. The ninja's corpse was being devoured by two wild dogs. From the appearance of things, they had already consumed the face and the throat and were now working their way down the right side of the body. Kyuubi made a silent promise to treat every dog he came across with kindness. Naruto concurred. That's 2 wild dogs that have come to your rescue. You really owe them. Kakashi, meanwhile, was curious as to how the dogs had gotten there. He took another look and concluded that nothing would be able to be salvaged from the ninja's body. He heard Sakura scream, turned around, and started walking the other way. At the sound, Kyuubi tuned in. Before Kakashi could rush to Sakura's assistance, however, a small group of armed men appeared from the thin wisps of mist that were still hanging over the bridge. One of them yelled, "You're not going anywhere," and the others all charged at Kyuubi and Kakashi. The men bolted toward Kyuubi and Kakashi as quickly as they could. Kakashi looked over at Kyuubi. "You must look after yourself, Naruto. Sakura doesn't seem like she's fit for combat, much less defending herself and someone else, and Sasuke is very hurt. I will assist her. I promise to return as soon as I can. Observe self-care." Kakashi then leapt over the men in the crowd and moved across the bridge to the other side. Ignoring this, the men concentrated on Kyuubi, the last ninja. "Bravo. I am unable to use my power for so long. This body would be ripped to pieces by it. I need time to recover. Then simply apply all of the ninja techniques you have studied. You already know that, mortal. If you call me mortal, I won't allow it." Kyuubi chose to focus on the task at hand rather than listen to the remainder of Naruto's speech. It was clear from the way they ran that none of them was a ninja or even remotely trained. Perhaps this won't be as awful as I anticipated. Kyuubi threw a kunai at an unguarded man's forehead. Attempting to sidestep, the thug took a hit to his right eye instead. The 2 men right behind him stumbled over his lifeless body as his momentum forced him to land on its stomach. With several more kunai, Kyuubi struck out. Most of them found their targets, but only a handful killed or seriously injured their victims. Kyuubi extended his right hand in front of him while holding onto the kunai in his left. Kyuubi used his shoulder to propel himself into the air as soon as the first thug got to him. He kicked the men close to him after spinning around and taking off. Kyuubi landed in the recently created gap in the crowd, then jumped up and slashed his kunai across the throat of a man who was still unsteady from the kick. A sword prevented Kyuubi from slashing another man as he spun around to do so. A few of them have weapons. Observing that the blade's edges lacked sharpness, Kyuubi seized the sword and held it motionless as he cut its owner's throat. Although there was some bleeding from the hand he had used to grip the sword, Kyuubi ignored it. Not that he wasn't covered in it from his previous battle. Kyuubi stabbed, spun, grabbed, and slashed. Then he came to a stop. Kyuubi was standing approximately 10 feet behind the 4 men that were left out of the group of maybe 20. While Kyuubi was undoubtedly hurt, his wounds were minor in comparison to the chaos all around him. His mask had come off over his lower face due to a stray blow. The men's eyes widened at the sight of his face as he turned slowly to face them. After the initial moments of the fight, Kyuubi started to take pleasure in it. Or perhaps, slaughter would be a more appropriate term. This was evident from the look on his face, an expression that gave the 4 men great fear. His mouth was twisted into a deranged smile, and even with his eyes still wearing genjutsu, they appeared just as fierce as they could have without it. The men took off running. That was not the men's fault. All they had been feeling was extreme fear. It was not their fault, therefore, that they panicked when they saw the second masked ninja look at them. They just noticed the bodies near the second ninja and thought the worst because they didn't realize the bodies were those of conscious but living people. They therefore did what seemed to be the only sensible thing to do: jump off the bridge, when the ninja turned to face them. Kakashi was a little perplexed. It was assumed that these men were seasoned criminals. Thus, they had no justification for leaping over the bridge's edge. Perhaps they were scared of the unconscious people around me. After taking one last glance to make sure Sakura and Sasuke would be okay, Kakashi hurried to assist Naruto. A powerful gust of wind arrived as he was running towards the unfinished end of the bridge, blowing away the remaining mist and revealing to Kakashi the reason behind the thugs' panic. Blood was slowly seeping off the bridge through the ducts designed to divert rainwater, covering the entire end of the bridge. Bodies littered the bridge, their faces painted with gory expressions as they lay in strange positions. And Kakashi caught sight of Naruto in the midst of it all. With his mask on and an expression that was impossible to read, the boy faced him. The clothes had changed from being black to a dark red color, and since Kakashi had last seen them, a few cuts and nicks had been added. Kyuubi approached Kakashi. Mission completed. As he and his team headed back toward Konoha, Kakashi pondered the mission. Tazuna, who had expressed that it was related to what Gato had done years prior, had seemed largely unaffected by the carnage. Someone had found the 4 men. Out of the 4, 3 had perished by drowning, and the 4th had been killed while attempting to murder those who discovered him as soon as they came into sight. The only evidence of the battle was a few tiny scrapes here and there and a plaque honoring the boy who had contributed the most to the completion of the Great Naruto Bridge. The bridge was finished. Gato was behind bars and probably would stay that way for a while. Naruto burned his other outfit and was now wearing his spare. It had been impossible to wash away the dried blood, and wearing it would have made it impossible to stay hidden. Naruto was causing Kakashi concern. A boy shouldn't be able to kill with such ease. It was far too easy for him to have taken a life for someone who had never done so. Though I acknowledge that he had a difficult upbringing, could it have been so severe as to cause him to lose all sense of reality? Alternatively, perhaps it wasn't his first murder. At first, Kakashi believed that Naruto could kill in such a way because of the Kyuubi. During Naruto's battle with the other mist nin, Kakashi had sensed the power of the Kyuubi. However, there had been no overwhelming presence of evil or a surge of demonic chakra during the second fight. There had been no indication of external interference. However, Kakashi was aware that no inexperienced boy should be able to kill so fast and then maintain such composure about it. Naruto continued to act exactly as he had before the mission, circling around and muttering to himself now and then about how slowly they were going toward Konoha. Kakashi would talk about this in private with the Hokage. He might have some knowledge of it. Kyuubi dashed through the forest, glancing back and forth to make sure the group had not stopped. Periodically, they would do this to tend to Sasuke's wounds. Kyuubi behaved just like he always did. How come he shouldn't? He had most likely killed tens of thousands of people. The number of people he had killed in the preceding seconds was far in excess of the few dozen more. However, there was a problem. Kakashi was much quieter than normal, and he kept looking at Kyuubi. He couldn't possibly know. Perhaps you ought to have moderated the altercation a bit. No, I was rushing to save my life because it is easier to kill than to capture. However, if you had fled, Kakashi would not have had any reason to suspect you. Kid, it is now too late to worry about that. What has transpired has transpired. Additionally, you must purchase a new outfit to replace the one you misplaced. Of course, that's a given, mortal. The mortal remark was disregarded by Naruto. Depending on how he felt, Kyuubi would seemingly switch between that and Kit. Naruto was aware of Kakashi's misgivings. It wasn't meant for children to be capable of such violence. Kyuubi was uninterested in his attempts to clarify the situation to him. Killing seemed as natural to him as, well, whatever demons normally do. Kyuubi couldn't understand how it could be that significant. Naruto hoped it would all end in nothing. Kyuubi cursed himself in his head. Most likely, the kid was correct. Kakashi would have only lingered in the Hokage's office if he had wanted to have a private conversation with him, probably regarding Naruto, which refers to me. Kyuubi needed to appear unconcerned and act normal. So he returned to his regular training grounds, which were the furthest away, and resumed his training. He bolted. Since his weights were covered in cloth, they did not clang together as he ran. It was fortunate that they had gone unnoticed during the mission. It would be awkward to let Naruto respond since Kyuubi didn't need to respond to any questions, and even though he and Naruto practiced switching while letting the body rest, they were still unable to do so without the body going limp for a brief period of time. When Kyuubi got to the big tree at the end of the field, he turned around and ran in the opposite direction. The tree had a smoothed out spot where he had consistently marked it. The wood was smooth and light brown where the bark had been. Every now and then Kyuubi would throw a kunai or execute a move while running. He moved along the trail he had plowed through the formerly grassy area. Kyuubi speculated that Kakashi might have been waiting for someone or the need to discuss something else. However, he was aware on the inside that none of those were true. Kakashi waited until his squad had vanished from view. He didn't want them to be perplexed as to why he required a private conversation with the Hokage. After they left, Kakashi returned to the office. Sarutobi raised his gaze. The elderly man questioned, "Did you forget something, Kakashi?" He had just put on his glasses to read some papers when he glanced at the junin around the rims of them. "Not at all. I have to talk to you privately." After closing the door, Kakashi took a seat in the chair in front of the big oak desk. The Hokage leaned back in his chair and placed his glasses on the table. "What do you need to talk about?" "Naruto is here. Considering the situation, he has been acting strangely." "Kakashi, he's had a difficult life. People can be changed by it." The fourth had hoped that Naruto would be regarded as a hero, but it was not to be. Naruto will have a slight alteration. Sir, that isn't it. That could help to explain why he rarely speaks and why he spent the entire trip running around like a crazy person. But you remember that brawl I told you about on the bridge during the debriefing? Sarutobi gave a nod. Naruto defeated the ninja he came across by using the chakra of the Kyuubi. Almost immediately afterward, he was himself again, but I believe he may have accomplished more than killing the ninja. In the brief time they were there, the body was a little too ripped to have been the dog's alone. That is the nature of the seal, Kakashi, interrupted Sarutobi. Being a vicious creature, the Kyuubi no Kitsune undoubtedly attacked the nin, then its body, until it stopped moving. In addition, the seal allows the Kyuubi to take over if Naruto experiences emotional instability on occasion. Thus, it makes sense that the Kyuubi would have surfaced at the very moment that Naruto was in grave danger. I see. Perhaps there is an explanation for that. However, I left Naruto later in the battle with Gatu's men to ensure Sakura didn't become overwhelmed in her attempts to defend Sasuke and herself. I experienced no demonic chakra during the battle, which, as you and I both know, cannot be hidden. I noticed 4 men running from the area where I had left Naruto as I made my way back to assist him. After glancing at me, they leapt to their death. Amid more than 12 corpses, I discovered Naruto. It's possible that they fled because they were the only ones who survived the men that Naruto encountered. I'm left with the only conclusion. Naruto killed them all by himself because there was never the slightest indication of demonic chakra. Despite being covered in blood and gore and having just killed over a dozen men, he did not appear to be at all bothered. He behaved the same as he had on the way there, running around and sporadically pausing to check our location on the road on the way back. From inside his robe, Sarutobi took out his pipe. Using an elaborate silver lighter, he lit it and took a long pull. He took a deep breath and let go of the smoke after a moment. He declared, "This is news indeed. It's most likely related to the Kyuubi. I'll investigate it. Don't behave any differently around Naruto in the interim." Although it was not his fault that he was sealed with the demon fox, anything unusual could push Naruto over the edge if he did murder all those people as you claimed. As you command, Hokage. Sama. Sensing that there had been no true resolution, Kakashi left the office. A few months later, Kyuubi was heading to the Hokage's office in preparation for a different mission. Kakashi appeared to have spoken with the Hokage but was unaware of the truth. Kyuubi recalled that the elderly man had spoken to him several times about how it was acceptable to express his feelings after committing his first murder. It was clear after the first 2 times that the elderly man was searching for a response, or an explanation for his lack of one. Just before the Hokage made his one appearance, Kyuubi had traded places with Naruto. Naruto told Kyuubi that he used to dream a lot about a big monster murdering people, and that at one point, this happened so frequently that he stopped being afraid of dying or killing people. After purchasing this, the elderly man stopped making visits until he stopped altogether. Kyuubi emerged from the morning sun and went inside. Sakura and Sasuke were already there, as was customary. Naturally, Kyuubi sat down to wait for Kakashi, who was running late. He paid no attention to the pink-haired genin's angry screams about how embarrassing it was to be late. Kyuubi considered what had happened lately. In less than 2 weeks, this was their 3rd mission. While one involved retrieving a cat, the other involved an escort mission that was comparatively uneventful. A drunken man had attempted to rob them, but he passed out after threatening them with a shovel, which was the only disturbance. At last, Kyuubi had reached his 3rd set of weights. There were now enough weights on him that they outweighed him. Kyuubi was incredibly appreciative of Naruto's suggestion to practice without them 1 day a week. He was so unaccustomed to it that on the first day he tried it. More than a month had passed since he had removed them for anything other than washing. He was unable to stand. Kyuubi paid Naruto back for this favor by bearing witness to his tirade about the futility of wearing weights if you couldn't fight with them off. Kyuubi heard Sakura start yelling at Kakashi for being late, and he snapped out of his fantasy. Sakura became even more enraged when Kakashi made a pitiful excuse about how he had been called in to rescue a little girl's kitten from a tree. Following them into the Hokage's office was Kyuubi. With a small cough, Sarutobi reminded Sakura that she should keep quiet. He started once everyone was paying attention. Team 7, you have to find a ring that some bandits stole from a local noble. If you can, bring the bandits back alive, and make sure you get the ring. The stone settings on the gold band alternate between emerald and jade. The group was last observed 5 miles to the southwest of this location. Are there any inquiries? Sarutobi went on, you are to depart tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, when no one responded. Wishing you luck. The Hokage sat back in his chair as Team 7 left the office. Something had seemed strange about Naruto's countenance. Perhaps it was the whisker marks, but something seemed to be missing. Feeling relieved that nobody had noticed his genjutsu slipping, Kyuubi left the office. Kyuubi was walking with the group on this mission at Kakashi's request. The demon hated to walk around and waste time, but Kakashi was right. Kyuubi running around would make it more likely for the bandits to find them. The demon adjusted the mask he wore on missions and during training. When it was on, all that was visible were his eyes, which effectively made him invisible at night. Naturally, that was the sole window of opportunity for Team 7 to travel in the hopes of apprehending the bandits. Kyuubi verified his genjutsu in his mind. He simply added a bit more chakra to extend its life because it was still there and operating as intended. One couldn't be too cautious after what happened on the mission to Wave Country, Kyuubi. Raising his hand, Kakashi signaled the genin to stop as he moved a step or two ahead of them. He glanced forward briefly before turning to whisper softly to the young ninja. "I'm going to investigate that cave now. I see light coming from somewhere, and it might be the thugs we've been tracking. Here, you wait. Return to Konoha if I don't return in 10 minutes. Recognize?" With a nod from the genin, Kakashi leapt into a tree and crept over to the cave. A few feet away, leaning against a tree, was a black silhouette that caught Sasuke's attention. "Naruto Uzumaki." Sasuke questioned the blonde genin's mental state. Sasuke reminisced about a time not too distant in the past when Naruto wore his garish orange pants and jacket, which he paired with an equally garish attitude and frequent outbursts. Subsequently, the boy had undergone a transformation, with his reserved demeanor and expressionless face standing in stark contrast to his attire. Subsequently, without any apparent cause, Naruto had changed once more, donning a new black outfit in place of the orange one. Everything was illogical. Sasuke failed to understand Naruto's motivations for doing any of this. Not to mention the drastic enhancement of the blonde's abilities. Sasuke recalled that Naruto had been failing all of his classes just a year prior. However, Naruto had made it through somehow, even managing to assist during the bell test. And while Kakashi had never said more than, "Naruto defended himself well," Sasuke thought Naruto had accomplished something incredible on the bridge in Wave. The way Kakashi hesitated before stating that Getu's men had been taken care of was obvious to Sasuke. The abrupt improvement in Naruto was similar to that of Sasuke's elder brother. Sasuke grimaced at the idea. "My name is Uchiha, I'll exact revenge on my clan and surpass Naruto in strength." Inside the cave, Kakashi noticed the men. 3 of the 4 were asleep. Perched atop a wooden stool and facing the exit of the cave, the 4th person maintained vigilance, his shadow cast far into the forest by the smoldering fire behind him. "For my students, this will be a great opportunity to practice stealth." When Kakashi looked, he noticed that each sleeping man had a little sack next to him. Perfect. Kakashi returned quickly to his group. Silently, Sasuke made his way along the rock wall until he was almost at the cave's entrance, just not in the firelight. After discovering the bandits concealed in this untamed cave, Kakashi made the bold decision to test their mettle by having each of them steal a bag from next to a sleeping man without getting discovered. The appearance of the cave was peculiar. There was only a small outcropping of rock, roughly 20 feet above the ground, with a 10-foot hole in one side. This opening led into the cave, which seemed to go much farther below the surface, according to Kakashi. The first slope of the cave led to a flatter area approximately 15 feet below the surface, where the bandits were located. The bandits slept in that place. Sasuke took a quick look around the bend. With the fire flickering, the long, thin shadows cast by the hanging stalactites moved back and forth across the ceiling. There must be a way around the security guard. Then, halfway down the incline, Sasuke noticed a small boulder inside the cave that was positioned close to the wall. Sasuke stayed in the shadow of the rock and crawled like a commando. When he reached the narrow gap between the rock and the wall, he peered down more. "I could see the guard, Sasuke." The guard gazed for a while at the cave's entrance. Then his head hung low as he began to nod off. However, before Sasuke could come out of hiding, the man snapped back to reality. This went on for a few more times, until Sasuke could practically feel the man's weariness rhythmically. When the man began to nod off once more, Sasuke was prepared. Leaping over the guard, who had his eyes half closed and was staring down, Sasuke landed just on the other side of the fire. He had trained a lot, and the cloth covering his sandals helped him land with almost no noise at all. He turned to look behind him. The man's eyes were fixed on the cave's entrance. Sasuke stepped over a man who was sleeping and picked up a sack. Feeling its weight, he lifted it slowly. He could not afford to be distracted by the tinkling coins or shiny metal objects. He used both hands to hold the sack firmly against his chest. He could jump in this manner without worrying about making a sound. Sasuke jumped over the man, taking him by surprise, and landed in the shadow of the rock. With haste, he fell on his stomach and gripped the sack beneath him. What was that? Who's in attendance? Sasuke stopped. Someone had discovered him, however, he heard the man's voice once more before getting up to flee. Cramping fire. The way the shadows flicker will drive me crazy. With a smile, Sasuke cautiously made his way outside the cave. He jogged back to Kakashi after he was outside and gave the sack to him. Excellent work, Sasuke. That was excellent because we haven't worked with stealth very much. Naruto, you move next. Kyuubi squatted quietly at the cave's edge. How in the world was Kami going to obtain one of those sacks? He was aware that Kakashi would never send genin on unprepared missions. He and Naruto pondered for some time. Then they recalled the peculiar training that Kakashi had required of them following their return from Wave. Sakura had completed her task while Sasuke and Naruto were watching over the bridge, so she hadn't arrived. Exercises involving tree climbing. Beneficial for chakra balance. Kyuubi spent roughly half of his training time running up and down trees, having incorporated that into his routine. However, this method was not just for trees. Kyuubi touched the stone outside the cave to feel its texture and comprehend how it differed from a tree. He ascended the jagged rock wall until he was above the cave's entrance after he felt secure in his knowledge. Then he made his way inside. Kyuubi crept along the cave's ceiling. There were so many stalactites that it was nearly impossible to move forward, but his black shape was invisible against their shifting shadows. The demon kept moving along the ceiling, staying out of sight behind the rock outcrops and the guard. He stooped to pick up a sack, which he placed in one of his black vest's front pockets. The sack was jammed firmly into the pocket because Kyuubi's muscles had grown since buying the vest, which was almost too small for him. Then he scaled the wall, made his way out of the cave by crawling along the ceiling, and made his way back to Kakashi. Kyuubi gave the sack to Kakashi. Well done, Naruto. Sakura, it's your turn. Sakura appeared to be standing for hours at the door. She was at a loss for ideas. She was wearing her Go.to red dress, which made it difficult to blend in. However, this was meant to be a stealth exercise. It dawned on her then. She waited until the guard's head began to sag before hurling a kunai handle. First directly at his head. The man was knocked unconscious by it. That was intended. The loud clatter the kunai made as it hit the ground was not part of the plan. The men stirred in their sleep. Sakura picked up a sack and fled as quietly as possible. What was that? Gosh darn it, I was fast asleep, and... whoa. What transpired with him? There's knife sitting next to him. As Sakura lost sight of Kakashi, she ran back to him. She gave the sack to him. Sakura, you've impressed me. I didn't... When Kakashi noticed 3 men coming out of the cave with drawn weapons, he stopped talking. One had a long knife, and the other 2 had swords. They cast a bewildered glance around, but Team 7 had managed to stay hidden by jumping into the trees. The men gazed into the forest for some time before hastily returning to the cave while speaking loudly. That will add a little difficulty to this, Kakashi said. Kakashi examined the circumstances. Swords and knives were the weapons carried by the 3 bandits. Even though the bandits didn't seem to have any ninja training, they were still difficult opponents. The knight looked over at Team 7. You two, Sakura and Sasuke, are going inside to apprehend those bandits. This will be an excellent opportunity for you to put your skills to the test because you lack Naruto's level of combat experience. Naruto, you remain close to the cave's entrance. You are to apprehend any men who attempt to flee by yourself. Additionally, go in there and assist Sasuke and Sakura if they are having too much trouble. Before the genin could go very far, Kakashi said, do not kill anyone unless it is absolutely necessary. The genin turned to leave. Sasuke gave Kakashi an odd look. Why would he feel the need to inform us of that? It is not his place to worry about genin killing someone. Sasuke looked for signs on his sensei's face, but there were none to be found. Sakura furrowed her brow. When Kakashi Sensei tries to commend our abilities, it's so obvious. Kyuubi winced, but got back up fast. Don't worry, Sensei. Attempting to sound nonchalant, he growled. The relieved expression on Kakashi's face baffled Sasuke. It had vanished as swiftly as it had appeared, making Sasuke question if he had actually seen it at all. Beneath the small boulder he had previously used, Sasuke lay flat on his stomach and listened to the thieves' conversation. Sakura was clinging to the stalactites on the ceiling at Naruto's suggestion. It came almost naturally to her because of her superb chakra control. I'm telling you, this is the sort of knife that those ninja types use. Avoid being foolish. A true ninja would have completed the task. That's my main point. We must depart before they return to complete us. Look, we're not getting out. In any case, we're probably toast if that was a real ninja. Still, that knife was most likely taken from a young ninja. No true ninja would strike someone with the blunt end of a knife like that. But what if their only intention was to incapacitate him? We could be rewarded if we are captured, so please stop talking. I'm not leaving, but it's okay if you want to. Though Sasuke could not make out any words from the man's mumbling, he soon noticed that the men were seated from the shadows. They spoke softly. Leaping out of his hiding place, Sasuke pulled out a kunai. As Sakura saw his attack coming, she fell from the ceiling and extracted a kunai. Give yourself up, Sasuke gave an order while extending his blade. The third man pulled out a long, serrated knife, while the other two drew swords. They attacked without saying anything. One of the swordsmen was thrown by Sasuke with his kunai, but the bandit sidestepped the blow. The first swordsman approached Sasuke, followed by the man holding the knife. The last robber lunged towards Sakura. Quickly creating multiple seals, Sasuke unleashed a massive fireball towards his attackers. The technique cast a blinding yellow light over the entire cave. The stool and a few other nearby pieces of equipment were flung back, scorching the men. Sakura used her kunai to block the swordsman's first blow before unleashing a powerful kick. With his sword swung straight down, aimed at her head, the man leapt over her leg. Sakura sidestepped, dodging the sword just in time, and seized the man by the shirt. She hurled him against the cave's back wall with all of her strength, landing him next to his allies. Surrender, Sasuke said once more. Disregarding him, the men picked up their weapons from where they had left them and went back into battle. The men were thrown back into the rock wall by Sasuke's second fireball. Sasuke thought, I can't do that again. I hate how weak I am. This is how I can't defeat Itachi. This is your last warning, Sasuke said calmly, hiding his worry from view. The men leapt back onto their feet, clearly intent on fighting to the very end. When Sasuke saw this, he quickly dashed into their group while drawing another kunai. He gave the knife wielder a kick to the stomach, causing him to lose consciousness. With his much smaller blade, Sasuke blocked a sword, then with his other hand he grabbed the sword blade and pulled. Sasuke leapt into the air as the man fell forward. Instead of swinging for Sasuke's head, the second swordsman struck the first one in the neck, partially beheading him. Seeing her opportunity, Sakura kicked the shocked bandit into the knife man who was recuperating. Unconscious, they both collapsed to the ground. Kyuubi heard the end of the fight from outside. Kakashi was waiting in the trees and he gave her a nod. Dropping to the ground, the junin strolled idly into the cave. Kyuubi trailed in his wake. Following the men's tying up, Kakashi gave Sasuke and Sakura her due congratulations. You've grown since our previous mission. It is very good for a genin to beat a hardened bandit without getting even scratched. Thus, if each of you three takes one of them, then... You lazy bum, Sakura let out a screech. Why don't you carry one of them? Because I will be carrying their things. Kyuubi sighed, listening to Sakura's whining. Living with a mortal body is difficult enough without having to put up with this girl's constant complaining. Naruto remarked, she has a name. If she doesn't seem deserving of your name call, at least you'll be practicing speaking with people. If you call her female in front of other people, you'll receive a lot of strange looks. As he picked up one of the men and slung him over his shoulder, Kyuubi conceded this point. Kakashi said, back to Konoha, then, as soon as everyone was prepared. The burly looking men standing close to the client received the men from Team 7. Since they'd been hitting the bandits on the head whenever they stirred, they'd made sure there were no escape attempts, so the ride back had been uneventful. After dismissing them, Kakashi promised to take care of informing the Hokage about the success of their mission. Kyuubi left for the training field right away in order to make up for the time he was unable to train while on the mission. With no further words, Sasuke put his hands in his pockets and left Sakura outside the Hokage's office. Sakura waited outside the office to discuss additional training with Kakashi. Sakura knew that Kakashi was weaker than her teammates even though she had not said anything. She paid attention to the inner voices. Excellent, Kakashi. It is likely that you are aware that the Chunin exams are approaching. I believe you should let them in based on their history. Naturally, the choice is yours. You are most knowledgeable about their abilities. Kokage. Sama, that seems like a wise suggestion. At our next meeting, I'll find out what they think. While inner Sakura gushed about her amazing abilities and how she would be the best kunoichi in the exams, Sakura grinned. Kyuubi showed up late in the afternoon at the customary meeting spot for Team 7. Since Kakashi was usually late, he didn't mind being an hour late. He sat down and leaned back against one of the log posts in the clearing, ignoring Sakura's cries. With his hands tucked into his pockets, Sasuke stood close to the tree line, leaning against a tree. His bangs hung down over his face, making his eyes half hidden. He must have worn the same Uchiha shirt, blue sandals, and white shorts since the beginning of time. With narrowed eyes, he gazed at Kyuubi as the ninja in black took a seat. Kyuubi sensed his eyes were covered in genjutsu. It felt typical. He looked over what he was wearing. He had been dressing in the same black clothes for some time. For the time being, his black cloth mask hung around his neck. The Uchiha is gazing at what? Sasuke gave Naruto a look. Boy, he had so much to surprise us. The boy who'd once yelled that he was Hokage had grown reticent of late, seldom saying anything at all. Naruto had switched from his flashy orange outfit to an all-black one day, as if on a whim. And he was a much better ninja now. Sasuke recalled Naruto's appalling grades and the blonde's impressive record of failing the academy exam multiple times. 1 year later, he changed from being a klutz dressed in odd clothes to dressing like an assassin and acting like a ninja. Sasuke scowled. There had been a change. Despite being aware of Iruka's passing, Sasuke felt that kind of experience was more likely to break someone than to inspire them to take action. And then, yesterday, he had been idly meandering through Konoha's streets when he had heard Kakashi and another junin conversing in an alleyway close by. Sasuke had a clear memory of the talk. Rewind. Slumped against the wall was Kakashi. In front of him, Asuma stood calmly, waiting for Kakashi to say whatever it was that had brought him here. When Kakashi finally said, "It's Naruto, he's changed a lot recently, and I'm worried about what he might do." Asuma remained silent, sensing there was more. "Naruto hasn't been talking much these days," Kakashi muttered. "He also dressed differently. He's not the same person as he once was. Additionally, on our journey to Wave Nation, what happened? He needed to battle a ninja, if not a junin. While under the Kyuubi's influence, Naruto killed him. That was maybe to be expected, but right after that he killed over a dozen people by himself. He was so unaffected by it that I had to tell him not to kill anyone on our final mission. It went without saying that our mission was to capture some men, but Naruto was acting so coldly toward Wave that I felt compelled to let him know. In order to avoid suspicion, I shared it with the entire team, but you're worried that he might do something." Asuma came to an end. "Indeed, he only killed enemies, so I'm not sure what else he could do, but I believe that in some situations, he might kill someone else, not merely a foe. Even his appearance has changed since I last saw him. His eyes are more vacant and darker." Asuma let out a sigh. He pondered for a moment before speaking. "I assume that you have talked to the Hokage about this." Kakashi gave a nod. "After that, watch him closely and do as the Hokage says. Although I acknowledge that he might be persuaded to kill someone or gravely hurt someone, I wouldn't worry too much about it as he hasn't acted aggressively toward his teammates." The two junin did not notice Uchiha Sasuke's slow departure because they were too focused on their conversation. Sasuke's brow furrowed. Why would Naruto have killed common criminals? And how could a demon that the fourth Hokage killed years ago have any effect on him? With his favorite book, Ika Paradise, open, Kakashi strolled into the clearing. He placed the book back into his pouch as he approached his students. Sakura stood in the middle of the field behind the posts, silently furious at his tardiness. When Sasuke emerged from his tree, Kyuubi raised his head from where he was standing. "I apologize for being late. This time, for real," he uttered as he noticed Sakura's enraged scowl. "For you guys, I had to get these forms. In just 1 month, the Chunin exams will take place, and I believe all 3 of you are qualified to compete. All you have to do to enter is sign these documents and give them to the Hokage. I've already given you permission. You are free to choose not to enter." It is not necessary to risk your life if you don't feel ready because people have died in the exams. Sasuke grinned. Naturally, he was prepared. If he couldn't even pass the Chunin exams, how could he possibly expect to kill his brother? He took Kakashi's form. Sakura let out a happy squeal. Even though she was aware of this beforehand, it was still thrilling when it truly occurred. She picked up a form. Kyuubi took the last sheet of paper after pausing for a moment. Kakashi said, "I think you all will do well," and then he vanished in a cloud of smoke. On the track he now referred to as his training field, Naruto ran. Occasionally, Naruto would check if he could still use the body by spending a day there. A dark night, broken only by the glow of a half moon. Tomorrow was the start of the exam's first section, a written exam of some kind. Although Naruto hadn't paid attention in class, Kyuubi had, so neither of them had reason to worry too much. After tripping over a rock, Naruto got back up and resumed his run. In order to get ready for the test, he and Kyuubi had agreed to use the fourth set of weights in the previous month. Although it was more challenging to run, it was functioning. "Kid, that's the point." At Kyuubi calling him by name, Naruto grinned. Once he'd complained long enough, the demon had decided to stop calling him mortal. It was a step forward. Naruto hurled a few kunai towards a tree. Despite his poor aim, his training allowed the kunai that did hit to completely embed themselves in the tree, only exposing the end of the handle. Naruto tasted the blood from his dinner from earlier in the evening as he licked his lips. With a few weights removed, his speed training made it easy for him to catch a deer. This specific deer was relatively young and had made for a tasty meal. Since he and Kyuubi preferred deer to other meat, it was uncommon for them to visit this area of the forest. Following Kyuubi's lead, Naruto consumed the deer without cooking it. It was one more way that Naruto began to mimic the demon. He was starting to look more and more like Kyuubi after all this time spent conversing. Kyuubi now had a general understanding of what was considered normal for humans and understood how difficult it was for them to grow strong. Naruto discovered that he was a carnivore and rarely ate anything else but meat. Additionally, he realized that killing someone was actually much simpler than knocking them out, and as a result, he began to despise other people and call them mortals. Naruto brushed against the weathered trunk of the tree before running away. There were still several hours before they had to report to the examination. Entering the room, Kyuubi took his designated seat in the third row, number 25. He noticed that Sasuke and Sakura were seated closer to the front already. The demon looked around, taking in everyone in the room. Kyuubi then noticed him. There was no mistaking the signs. The sandy gourd, the black rings around the eyes, and the faint hint of murderous intent. The host of Shukaku. This examination was going to be fascinating. Kyuubi departed the room slowly. He understood the actual purpose of the test after hearing the guidelines and observing how challenging the questions were. One of the Chunin with the answers was standing to his right. He made no attempt to conceal his knowledge. Kyuubi allowed Naruto to view the answers from his mental perch since he was aware that the examiners were observing. Naruto could only just barely focus on a point that was in Kyuubi's peripheral vision due to his position. Thus, Kyuubi never needed to look up because Naruto had all the answers. Upon hearing the 10th question, Kyuubi remained silent in the room. This is very simple. The chief examiner had congratulated the ninjas on passing after more than half of them had left. The strange woman who had crashed through the window, Anko, then instructed them to meet the next day for the second part of the exam at the Forest of Death. Kyuubi laughed at the cryptic moniker. Kyuubi waited the following morning while Anko went over the test's guidelines. Kyuubi waited for the exam to begin by standing close to the back of the genin crowd. Kyuubi just waited impatiently for the rules to end, knowing that Naruto was listening. After Anko was done, Team 7 jogged to Gate 17 after receiving their Earth Scroll. Sakura inquired, who should carry the scroll? With a shrug, Sasuke let go of the scroll, and Kyuubi slipped it into one of his secret pockets. Sakura remained silent despite having a sour expression. Subsequently, the signal was given, the gate opened, and the second exam phase started. Hands tucked into his pockets, Kakashi strolled slowly around the edge of the Forest of Death. It was not always clear, but he was concerned about his students. He wasn't reading his book, and he occasionally cast glances into the forest. Every now and then he would pause and sigh. Sasuke needs to use caution inside. Although Naruto hasn't taken any action yet, it's impossible to predict what additional consequences the demon might have on him. If nothing else, Sasuke's intelligence allowed him to deduce what had happened on the bridge from the fact that I had told Asuma about it in public. Though I wasn't really paying attention, I thought I felt his presence. Kakashi peered back into the forest, but his vision was limited to a few yards due to the dense undergrowth. Sasuke, be careful. Kyuubi leapt from tree to tree, trailing Sakura and Sasuke. His cloth mask had started to slide down, so he readjusted it. Kyuubi pulled the knot tighter. For the better part of 30 minutes, Team 7 had been meandering through the forest rather aimlessly. They had yet to locate any other teams, so they needed to locate one with a heaven scroll. Sasuke came to a stop 50 feet up on a big branch. Kyuubi and Sakura touched down on either side of him. Kyuubi inhaled deeply. There was another team close by. It was Sasuke who spoke. A team is directly in front of us. You go around that side, Sakura, he gestured to their left. Naruto, you should go around that side, he said, indicating the right. I'm going to investigate this near side. Try to determine which scroll they possess. If a scroll of heaven is seen, come talk to me so we can organize an assault. Come back if you spot an earth scroll, and we'll head out. Fighting is pointless when it's unnecessary. Nodding, Sakura and Kyuubi leapt to the designated spots. Sasuke edged nearer to the opposing squad. He observed 3 sound nin while pecking through some branches. A girl was the one moving in the center. Her black hair was long and fell past her shoulders. She had on black pants and a gray vest. A boy with short, disheveled black hair, a tan jacket, and black pants was standing on her left. The man to her right had little on display. Bandages seemed to cover his entire body, and he was dressed in a bulky black pant and gray coat. The guy's face was sufficiently covered by the bandages to allow him to see. Sasuke peered closely, trying to figure out where their scroll might be hidden. In an instant, he noticed a small protrusion on the right side of the boy's bandaged coat. Perhaps Naruto will have a clearer view of it. Kyuubi peered through the leaves at the strange group. Fortunately, Kyuubi was able to make better use of his black uniform today because the leaves were thick enough to block out most of the sunlight. He noticed a tiny protrusion on the near side of the boy's mysterious coat. He followed the pack of sound nins as he tiptoed around the big branch he was sitting on. The boy's hands were in the way, making it impossible for Kyuubi to see into the pocket with the bulge. Kyuubi suddenly froze upon hearing a loud snap coming from the other side of the group. The sound nin came to a halt and extracted kunai. Glancing downward, Kyuubi noticed that the lad with the bandage had shifted his arm to make room. With the sound nin was a scroll of heaven. Sasuke swore silently. How was Sakura able to be so foolish? He fell soundlessly to the ground, hiding behind a big tree trunk and moving as close to the enemy nin as he dared. Sakura was afraid to breathe. When she moved to get a better view, she stepped on the dead twig that was protruding from the branch she was standing on, breaking it with an awfully loud snap. She had not noticed it. Sakura leaned close to the tree and hoped the sound nin would not approach to look around. I'll go investigate, the girl with black hair said, Kin. Dosu nodded. His face was covered in so many bandages that you could still see his severe expression. After leaping into a tree, Kin surveyed the area. This is where the sound had originated. Dosu sensed a presence out of nowhere and spun to avoid a kick from a short, all-black ninja. After Dosu leaned back to avoid the dark ninja's punch, he leapt back and flipped over Zaku. Zaku held out his arm, palms facing the dark ninja. For a moment, the peculiar red gem in the middle of his palm glowed. Subsequently, a fierce tornado emerged, sending the ninja with the black clothing flying back into a tree, where he disappeared with a cloud of smoke. 12 more ninjas, just like that, fell from the trees. In the clearing, Zaku and Dosu stood side by side, ready for anything. When Sasuke witnessed the first clone attack, he was destroyed. He went to Sakura's aid believing Naruto had everything under control when he saw a dozen others start to attack. Not that he was particularly fond of her, but his team's survival was necessary for him to pass. On the opposite side of the tree Sakura was standing on, she heard the sound girl land on a branch. Then there was a loud sound, like a wind gust. What in the world was that? Peeking around the tree, Sakura noticed the other girl was preoccupied with what seemed to be multiple Naruto clones attacking her teammates. This might be my one and only chance. Sakura hurled a kunai directly towards the girl's back of the head. It went straight through the girl's skull. But then a kunai embedded in a log was visible through a puff of ninja smoke. Sakura let out a gasp and spun around in a motion that appeared to be slow. With an evil grin, The sound girl threw her kunai at the startled pink-haired kunoichi. Smirking, Kin threw her weapon at the girl who was obviously shocked. How pitiful of a kunoichi's excuse. But then she felt another kunai come from behind her and deflect her own, making her smirk freeze awkwardly on her face. She spun around and felt a sensation of slow motion that Sakura had not felt just moments before. Just before she saw nothing at all, she saw the bottom of a blue sandal and two fierce red eyes with odd comma markings in them. Sok landed beside Sakura on the branch. He heard the sound of the kunoichi hitting the ground, a sickening thud. She would be lucky to have just a few cracked ribs. "You alright?" he sternly questioned Sakura. "I think so. Sasuke-kun." With a grunt, Sasuke leapt to assist Naruto by bringing the other two sound ninja. Leaning against the trunk of a large tree, Naruto scowled. His shadow clones were effectively destroyed by the two sound nin. The person holding the gems in his hands had the ability to destroy clones from a distance, while the person wearing bandages took care of any clones that approached too closely. "We're glad we've been training for so long. I have all day to send these clones. Hopefully, the chakra they need for their techniques will eventually run out." Kyuubi made another 12 clones while forming a hand seal. As they ran into the trees, the clones threw their kunai at the two sound nin. The more typical of the two sound nin sent a biting wind that dispelled the cloned kunai, just as it had every time before. The clones launched an assault. The other ninja mysteriously poofed out of existence as they got close to the other one, while three were caught in the second whirlwind that the ninja unleashed. Strong wind that sounded like it had been directed at the other side of the clearing was heard by Kyuubi just before he created another set of clones. Kyuubi glanced around the massive tree trunk and saw Sasuke swerving to avoid the approaching dangerous vortex. Kyuubi made 12 clones while forming the well-known hand seal. Then he launched an attack with his clones. Zaku unleashed another burst of wind towards the leaf nin with Ravenhair. He was not going to allow that punk to escape. Another group of black-clad ninja began to hurl their kunai in his direction. He pivoted, annihilated them, and resumed shooting at the leaf nin. However, where was he now? Dosu let out a moan as a second, more powerful wave of ninja charged at him. He focused and let go of his massive waves of sound. As the clones got closer to the edge of his attack, they started to fade. Unaffected by the sound waves, one suddenly emerged from the smoke and punched Dosu into Zaku's back. The two landed in a heap on the ground. When Dosu looked up, he saw a massive fireball flying directly toward him, and there was nothing he could do about Zaku being trapped beneath him. Sasuke's grand fireball struck the two stunned ninja, exploding in an impressive display of heat and light, and Kyuubi leapt away. Approaching the unconscious ninja, Kyuubi removed the scroll from the burnt coat pocket of the bandaged, smoldering sound nin. The original Earth scroll was in the pocket where he inserted the Heaven scroll. Sasuke approached and took in the surroundings. All of the trees in the clearing had lost their branches, with the exception of those that could not be seen from the clearing. Sasuke then realized that this clearing had never existed before. For what duration did Naruto avoid those explosions? It was impossible for him to have so much chakra and be able to use clones at the same time. He turned to face Naruto and noticed the immaculate black outfit. It was not even damp with sweat, nor did it have the usual wrinkles from running around. Naruto is a ninja of what kind? Team 7 raced towards the forest center. With the second scroll in hand, all they had to do was make it to the tower before the allotted 3 days ran out. Hopefully, they would get here early tomorrow. Sakura was unbelievably exhausted. They were running all the time, and she was almost at her breaking point, but she wasn't going to complain. They said nothing, but she could tell the two boys were getting frustrated with her meager ninja skills. Sasuke kept moving at the rapid speed at which they had been going for some time. Before the last groups of exam takers stake it out for scrolls, we have to reach the tower. Sasuke was starting to feel a little worn out, but he had no plans to stop. He looked down to the forest floor far below them to see if there were any other groups there. Observing none, he eased up a little. They appeared to be ignoring the other teams by darting through the trees at a height of several hundred feet. Sasuke questioned when Naruto had become intelligent enough to propose something like this. Kyuubi trailed along behind, staying vigilant with his amplified senses. He was not at all tired. Team 7's pace was barely half of what he was able to run during training. He could maintain this pace all day. The odd smell of death he occasionally detected was the only thing bothering him. The smell of death was probably to be expected since killing was allowed in the exam, but each time Kyuubi detected it, the stench was stronger, suggesting that the source was closer. Kyuubi pondered whether a different team was toting a dead body, maybe thinking that by doing so they would be able to pass even though one of their teammates had died. The intensity of the odor, however, indicated that the source was very close, too close for Kyuubi to miss. Was there someone following them, a junin? How come a junin would be carrying a corpse? Abruptly, the odor intensified significantly. Kyuubi turned to face the unusual sight he had never seen before. Sasuke could see a head on an absurdly long neck hurtling toward him. Though Kyuubi's attention was drawn to the pale, ashen skin and the yellow, slitted eyes, the black hair waved in the breeze of its own movement. Kyuubi hurled a kunai at it, but the head sidestepped and continued to approach. When the kunai struck a tree, Sakura and Sasuke turned to face each other. Sakura let out a cry. Without delay, Sasuke created multiple seals in quick succession and threw a massive fireball towards the head. The head ducked and swerved to the side, only to be forced backward by another ball of fire. Team 7 came to a halt and kept an ear out for any sign of the assailant. Sasuke touched a tree with his ear. The sounds of a forest were all that could be heard. However, before they could proceed, a man fell from the tree canopy and landed on a branch a few yards ahead of them. He wore black shoes, purple pants, a tan shirt with a purple rope tied around the waist, and a big straw hat that he wore tilted forward to cover his face. "Who are you?" exclaimed Sasuke. The man removed his hat, exposing the head they had been viewing moments earlier. With his mouth hanging open in a deranged smile, the man gave them a fierce glare. A pulse of evil energy seemed to emanate from the yellow eyes. Kyuubi turned to face the strange man, who was still standing there beaming. What the devil is wrong with this guy? What is the reason behind his smile? Kyuubi made a seal and 12 shadow clones appeared. The man gave him a startlingly confused look as soon as he turned to face him. With their kunai drawn, the clones lunged at the man in an attack. However, the man slithered with a serpentine grace past every stab and slash. Abruptly, his tongue protruded from his mouth, seizing a clone and using it as a mallet to smash multiple others against a tree. In a cloud of smoke, the clones vanished. Subsequently, the man used his tongue as a whip, causing several loud cracks that indicated the clones that were left to perish. Kyuubi turned to face Sakura and Sasuke. Their faces displayed expressions of pure terror, and they remained where they had been. The strangely dressed man kicked Kyuubi into a tree trunk while she was distracted. Kyuubi created 20 clones as he fell. As the branches fell, he and the clones grabbed onto them and used all of their strength and speed to charge back. The man was decent. No, he was excellent. But as a dozen clones moved in for close quarters and another dozen launched kunai from a distance, he couldn't help but take a few nicks here and there. The ninja with the strange outfit stopped smiling. Anger was twisted across his face. There was a sickly, fierce light in his eyes. Abruptly, he pulled out a kunai and, in a blur of steel and smoke, annihilated every clone within a few feet of him. The man was briefly hidden by the smoke. Then, kunai emerged from the cloud and impaled each clone, eliminating them from the battle at once. Even Kyuubi barely escaped a kunai. He turned to look at Kyuubi. Looking into those yellow eyes, the demon thought he felt a pulse of energy come out of those slitted pupils. Perhaps his mortal senses were playing tricks on him. However, it appeared to have no effect, so Kyuubi took immediate action. He made 50 clones by jumping off his perch on a branch, and then he and all of his copies threw their kunai at the man. The pale ninja ducked under nearly every blade hurled at him, his movements so deft that it seemed as though he had no bones at all. One of the kunai got stuck in his right calf. All of a sudden, it was clear that this ninja had been playing around with Kyuubi. He hurled hundreds of kunai, real or cloned, in all directions around him in an instant. Clones disappeared in smokestacks. After leaping to attack, Kyuubi remained in midair and twisted to avoid the knives, blocking what he was unable to avoid with his weights. There were muffled clangs as the blocked kunai fell away. After landing hard on a branch, Kyuubi faced his adversary. The ashen, skinned ninja was upon him already, much to Kyuubi's dismay. With a strong kick, Kyuubi flew into a tree and landed on a branch. He stood up slowly and turned to face the strange ninja. The pale ninja bit his thumb, formed multiple seals, and then wiped the blood onto Kyuubi's arm. Before Kyuubi could take any action, a massive snake with its head touching the branch the strange man was standing on materialized right in front of the man. The man grinned at Kyuubi as he stepped on the snake's head. "You obviously have no idea with whom you are dealing. I am Orochimaru, one of the legendary Sannin. No genin could ever hope to defeat me, even if they are ready for promotion. Now, I am a nice man, and I did not come here for you." So if you wish to live, I suggest you move aside and let me talk with Sasuke-kun. After pausing to consider, Kyuubi lowered his combat stance. This Orochimaru is far too skilled for me. Disinterestedly, Kyuubi observed Orochimaru approach Sasuke and bite his neck. Sasuke was startled out of his daze by this, but the bite seemed to knock him back out again. Before Sasuke could tumble off the branch, Orochimaru grabbed him and balanced him on the branch. Sakura jumped to her feet, flinching suddenly. She pivoted to face Orochimaru and attempted to draw a kunai, but the snake nin karate chopped her in the neck without her even having to look at her. Sakura collapsed to the ground hundreds of feet below, unconscious. From his own mind, Naruto had been observing the fight with curiosity. That being said, Kyuubi's abrupt capitulation worried him. Though Orochimaru is strong, Naruto thought to himself, it's unwise to simply leave Sasuke in that state. However, in order to survive, we must act. Naruto saw Orochimaru bite Sasuke and then use one blow to render Sakura unconscious. Kyuubi, we have to take action in this regard. He just destroyed our group. No, Kyuubi answered. This guy is strong, and we need to survive. I won't fight him if I don't have to. Kyuubi, you just witnessed what he did. What if he returns later to get us? If he comes again, you might not see him in time because you hardly saw him the first time. Just as Kyuubi opened his mouth to speak, Orochimaru interrupted. Now then, you didn't really think that I'd let you live after you put me through all that trouble, did you? As the enormous snake attempted to devour Kyuubi, he ducked and Orochimaru caught him with a powerful kick. The demon struck a big tree and crashed onto a branch below, causing a dent in the trunk. If things continued as they were, Kyuubi would not be able to keep up with Orochimaru. However, that was not how they stayed. Kyuubi whirled around and let go of his weights, hurling them at Orochimaru or around him the next time he leapt toward him. With the exception of the second forearm weight, which hit him in the right calf, the Sannin avoided all of the other weights and blocked one each forearm and calf. Orochimaru's right leg became nearly useless due to the heavy weight and the previously lodged kunai in his leg, which caused his leg bones to break in half. In addition, Orochimaru's weight made him spin in midair, preventing him from moving until he touched down. Kyuubi took advantage of this and used all of his weight, enhanced strength to punch the snake nin. Instead of hitting the trunk, Orochimaru managed to grab hold of a branch as he flew toward another tree. This was the moment the snake summon decided to strike, sending Kyuubi swerving to avoid the ferocious blow that left bite marks in the tree that was unlucky enough to be in the way. Using the opportunity, Orochimaru climbed onto the branch he had grabbed and supported his leg with a branch. As Kyuubi engaged in combat with the snake, he tested it. Once more, the snake lunged towards Kyuubi. The demon ducked to the right, slicing the side of the snake with a kunai as it went by. With a growl of agony, the snake lunged towards Kyuubi. The boy dressed in black leapt to his left, throwing the kunai at the snake as he went out of the tree. The knife entered the snake's eye and became embedded in its brain. The massive snake squirmed in pain, briefly colliding with trees before vanishing in a puff of ninja smoke. With his kunai drawn, Orochimaru silently leapt into the air, heading straight for Kyuubi, who had just landed on a big branch, out of the snake's deadly grasp. Before a kunai was stabbed into his back, Kyuubi didn't realize the snake nin was there because he thought Orochimaru was still caring for his leg. Kyuubi fell off the branch onto another below, screaming in agony. Orochimaru sank onto the branch and peered at the dark ninja curled up in a fetal position against the tree trunk. Pathetic. Was this the thing I was battling? Kyuubi turned to face the snake nin, who was framed by a massive, old tree from behind. The demon became aware of his inferiority. I'm going to pass away. What? I'm not going to die. I'm not going to let it. With thousands of tiny branches and hundreds of larger ones, the tree reached a height of nearly 1,000 feet. It had originated from a seed long before Konoha was founded. Without a single bend and without any evidence of missing branches, its proud trunk grew straight up. It had been expanding for more than 200 years. In actuality, it continued to expand until the second section of a particular Chunin exam. Orochimaru was smashed against the tree by the enormous ball of flaming demonic chakra, which destroyed that section of the trunk entirely in a flash of flame. Wood fragments and splinters flew everywhere, getting lodged in trees close by or soaring deep into the forest. With the force of the explosion, the top portion of the tree, which was no longer fixed to the ground, toppled over and partially caught fire before falling into the forest. Kyuubi's blood-red eyes gleamed with an inner rage, and his genjutsu had disappeared. His body was encased in demonic chakra, taking on the shape of a humanoid fox with enormous, intimidating claws. Behind him, 4 large orange chakra tails writhed. Subsequently, the image of Kyuubi faded and vanished. The Kyuubi had not reached Konoha when Orochimaru had left. Until now, he had never felt especially appreciative of having missed that occasion. The intense heat caused Orochimaru's false skin to flake off and burn, causing him to scream in pain. When he hit that old tree, his scream was cut off for a moment, but then the power of his body and the demonic chakra inside that enormous sphere destroyed the tree and sent him flying. But before he could hit another tree, he noticed 2 red, slitted eyes that were filled with anger. Suddenly, Kyuubi materialized in front of him, his right hand, or was it a paw, raising and extending its long claws. Orochimaru suffered a slash across his face from Kyuubi, which left long, blackened claw marks extending from the top left of his forehead to the bottom right of his face. And, if it matters to anyone, those directions to the right and left were from Orochimaru's perspective. Before Orochimaru could even register the pain from that wound, Kyuubi slashed across the snake, Nin's stomach with his left hand. The slash sent tan cloth shreds flying, and the pale ninja was thrown back into a tree trunk. With a swift motion, Orochimaru stood up on his good leg and held back one hand. A tiny tongue of purple chakra capped each finger of that hand one by one. Awaiting an attack from the demonic genin, the snake.nin waited. He had to wait barely a moment. Kyuubi leapt just off his branch and then away from the trunk of the tree. His right hand was held back as he leapt straight at the ninja with pale skin. Orochimaru grinned. However, the demon shot a smaller sphere of fiery chakra with his right hand before he could attack. With a quick maneuver to Kyuubi's left, Orochimaru struck the demon in the stomach with 5 fingertips coated in chakra, slightly off center. After flying past that tree, Kyuubi collided with a branch. The demon was falling quickly. He had not even had time to grab onto the branch. Why was I unable to use my other hand to grab it? Kyuubi then realized why when he attempted to move his other hand. He had paralysis on the left side of his body. What is happening? Kyuubi, from somewhere inside her head, Naruto called. There's a problem. That chair kind of repels your chakra because half of it is covered in strange purple seals. Do you have any left side movement at all? No, I'll then be in charge of this half. I believe that if I sit only on this half, my left side of the body will be under my control. Orochimaru grinned. Having resolved that, he could now turn his attention to more pressing matters. The boy struck a branch, and the snake.nin turned to face it. How in the world? Just in time, Orochimaru sidestepped a third slash from the orange claws of the demon. After landing on a branch, Kyuubi turned to face a figure that, if it could be said so, was even more menacing than the previous one. Naruto's right side was entirely normal, but the other was covered in the same fiery chakra. Most people would get the creeps from the boy's eerie gaze, which had 1 blue eye and 1 red eye. Most people were not Orochimaru. The peculiar failure of the 5 season seal intrigued him. It appears that my blow did not land in the center of his stomach. My aim was slightly off due to having to dodge to the side, but it seemed to be far enough off that the seal's effect was diminished. With an awkward gait, Naruto pulled a kunai from the pouch on the other leg. He attempted to get used to this new gait gradually, as did Kyuubi. Orochimaru took in the odd sight of the boy with only partial power. He only succeeded in breaking my leg by chance, and that's the only thing that kept me from killing him. I guess I've played here for too long. Before I have to entertain Konoha's Anbu as well, I believe I'll head out. Orochimaru turned and walked away. And where do you think you're going? Yelled Naruto, Kyuubi in a voice that sounded like 2 voices conversing simultaneously, one with a cold, high tone and the other with a deep growl. Orochimaru turned to face the boy. Demon, I'm done playing with you. I have other things to do. With a roar, Kyuubi lunged towards Orochimaru. However, the pale ninja's form turned to mud as he slashed across the snake. Nin's retreating back. Orochimaru had departed by now. Kyuubi let out a frustrated snarl before collapsing to the earth beneath, having exhausted this delicate human body's capacity to withstand demonic chakra. Kyuubi grimaced from his cage. What had been done to them by that pale freak? What kind of method could prevent him from bringing his chakra into reality? He already knew from Naruto that the seal appeared to affect demonic chakra exclusively. Naruto approached, put his hands on the chair, and tried to feel something, but he was unable. It appeared that Naruto would have to hold onto the body for a while. Hey, try not to be so sad. Perhaps there is someone in Konoha who could remove the seal for us. Consider, Naruto. If you approached someone and asked them to take off a seal so you could use demonic chakra once more, what would they say? I would already be well known to anyone who knew how to break the seal, right? Who on earth would knowingly give your body greater access to my chakra? Jiraiya sneezed a few miles away, right outside a women's bathhouse. Sakura was startled awake. That weird ninja, where had he gone? She knew she must have fallen to the ground after the ninja struck her because of the sudden pain from fresh bruises. She shot to her feet and peered around. She failed to notice him. The moon's gentle glow was the only source of light in the otherwise pitch black night. Sakura eased up, but then tensed up when she realized that she, too, had no idea where her team was. Then she noticed a foot protruding from a bush, wearing blue sandals. She hurried over and nearly burst into tears upon seeing Sasuke unconscious. Once she arrived, though, she was able to see around a big tree and saw something else. There was fire in the forest of death. The forest was starting to burn because flames from one of the oldest trees had spread to others. In an attempt to wake Sasuke, Sakura shook him. Nothing more than a murmur in his sleep from Sasuke. Sakura then noticed Naruto lying a short distance away. She hurried to give him a shake. Wake up, Naruto. We need to get out of here. After opening his eyes, Naruto let out a moan due to a sudden surge of agony. The extraordinary healing rate that half of his body had previously possessed had vanished. Come on, Naruto. You need to carry Sasuke-kun, and we need to get out of here before the fire spreads. Burning. Oh, I see, Kyuubi. I'm not to blame. The fight was started by that freaky snake. That sounded, Kyuubi. Immature. Kid, don't lecture me. That is preferable. Trying to ignore the stabbing pain that shot through his entire left side of his body, Naruto stood up. He quickly circled the area, gathering up his weights and putting them back where they belonged. He then went over to pick up Sasuke and slung the boy over his good shoulder. Naruto used his left hand to reposition his mask, which was nearly destroyed during the battle. Nor had Kyuubi's flaming aura been helpful. Sakura used the stars to guide her as she made her way to the tower, and Naruto trailed behind. Sakura received a very unpleasant surprise shortly after. To conserve energy, she and Naruto had been sprinting along the ground, crossing their fingers that they would not encounter anyone. That was not to be, though. Abruptly they emerged into a clearing and found another team gathered around a fire. Sakura and Naruto came to a complete halt. The opposing team turned to face them. Gazing upon the leaf.nin that had just entered the clearing, Gaara looked. Fighting is useless because we already have both scrolls. Still, kill them. Murder them. Take a sip of their blood. Disregarding the voice in the back of his mind, Gaara maintained his stoic focus on the pink-haired, pale ninja and the battered, disheveled boy wearing black clothes. Tamari raised her gaze to the visitors. If they aren't paying attention enough to see our fire before they stumble into the clearing, what kind of ninja are they? After glancing at the leaf.nin, Konkaru turned his gaze back to the fire. Oi, who do you think you are, barging into our campsite like that? You're lucky we already have both scrolls, or you'd be in a lot of trouble right now. The genin with pink hair gave a nervous smile. Sorry to bother you, we'll be leaving now. No, the small boy with red hair who had just spoken up caught everyone's attention. Observe the lovely moon. It will provide such a lovely backdrop for a small-scale massacre. Murder them. Not just yet. Then, just one. Murder that foolish girl. Make her scream. Pour her blood all over the grass. Gaara blocked the voice out. What are you running from? Sakura hesitated, then concluded she could respond to that. We ran into a strange guy with pale skin and yellow eyes. He looked at us, and then all of a sudden, I felt like I was dying, over and over. When I woke up, we were all on the ground, and it was night. A faint frown formed on Gaara's lips as it moved. These two obviously hadn't seen the demon whose energy he'd sensed. His gourd started to leak sand. After observing the looks on the faces of the other two sand.nin when they noticed the sand emerging from the gourd, Naruto took Sakura's arm and dragged her back the path they had originally taken. Even faster, sand began to pour out of the gourd. Naruto made 30 clones and sealed the area. Many of these hanged, and soon copies of Sakura and Naruto were racing around the clearing, sporadically vanishing in a cloud of smoke as they were overtaken by Gaara's sand. Happy to be out of that situation, Naruto and Sakura ran towards the tower. But as they approached, the same odd redhead materialized in front of them, emerging from the sand that had sprung up from the earth. Sakura received Sasuke's limp body from Naruto. Every now and then Sasuke would sigh and a tiny wisp of purple chakra would emerge from the mark around his neck. With the hope that Naruto would help them get through this, Sakura hefted the boy with the raven hair to her shoulders before jumping back into a tree. Gaara gave the dark boy a look. If he was stupid enough to stop fleeing from Sabaku no Gaara, then clearly he had no idea with whom he was dealing. Naruto lowered himself into a combat stance. If this fight was going to last long, he would have to remove his weights again because he was exhausted. But the right side of his body was in perfect shape because of Kyuubi, which diminished the effects of his previous battle. Though it was still intact, his left side of the body was more worn out. Sand suddenly burst forth from Gaara in Naruto's direction. The boy gave him such a cold look that the leaf.nin ducked to the side and charged at him. Just before he could make contact, though, a wall of sand shot up and blocked his punch. Naruto struck, kicked, and stabbed, but each blow was repelled by a fresh wall of sand that would materialize, absorb the blow, and vanish. Gaara could take no more of this. The dark ninja was forced to retreat several yards as he threw sand in all directions. Then the sand began to flow toward the poor leaf.nin like a massive wave. Gaara thought, "Ninja of Konoha, good. Bye. At last. Make the trees splatter with his blood. Smell his blood, please." However, Gaara was shocked and startled to see several tiny, flaming objects piercing the wall of sand. What? When Naruto saw the wall, he only saw one possible way out of this predicament: Kyuubi. With lightning speed, Kyuubi took control of Naruto's right side of the body, setting the grass surrounding his right foot on fire and partially immolating him once more. He filled the right side weights with his demonic chakra and hurled them towards the sand wall. The air surrounding the weights ignited as they glowed red hot, charged with evil chakra. They melted a path for themselves as they glided into and through the wall of sand. After lowering the weights on his left side to the floor, Naruto repositioned himself so that the blow from the sand would strike Kyuubi's side of the body. The semi-flaming boy was struck by the sand, which proceeded past him, melting any sand that came in contact with the hot chakra. After the wave passed, Naruto dashed toward the red-headed boy, running around the glass shape that had materialized in front of them. Though Kyuubi didn't give it much thought, he had a sneaking suspicion that he ought to find out who this boy was. Or at the very least, how he managed to control sand. There were more important things to attend to. Gaara was astounded by the strange, fiery ninja who had broken through a 5-foot thick wall of sand. Though the boy was moving much more quickly than a typical genin, the sand was still returning to him quickly. Get moving. The Kyuubi no Kitsune is that. The demon with tailed fox. Get away, you moron, he's got enraged with you. Shukaku, you are nothing but a coward without your sand to shield you. Do you have something better in mind? Your armor of sand will be useless if he manages to get to us, he might murder you. Gaara picked up sand from the ground after conceding this point. A cloud of sand lifted him, keeping the enraged demon out of reach. Until the next time we meet, fellow Jinkarichi. Gaara floated back towards his campsite as the gourd on his back was reformed by the sand that remained on his back. Naruto, Kyuubi observed him vanish from view. After that, Kyuubi gave up control of Naruto's right side, which he regained with only a slight stumble. Did that at last, even though it was just half of the body, without tripping over. Sakura fell from the trees, but she sensed. Terrified of Naruto. Who would have imagined that one day everyone would be afraid of the ninja who used to run around screaming his desire to be Hokage while wearing an orange jumpsuit? After gathering the weights for his left side and putting them back on his arms, legs, and torso, Naruto turned to get the ones for his right side. He eventually arrived at the small stream by kicking the weights in that direction after hearing its trickles. Sakura trailed him, keeping a safe distance behind. With a great hiss of steam, Naruto kicked his weights into the water. After a short while, he waited and then retrieved them from the stream. They were still warm, but not uncomfortable. After placing them where they belonged, he turned to face Sakura. I can carry Sasuke now. Sakura merely gazed at him before giving Sasuke his limp hand. The boy was slung over Naruto's right shoulder. Sakura was staring at him when it dawned on her that she was the one who knew the way to the tower. After examining the stars, she started jogging. Naruto trailed closely behind, praying he wouldn't pass out before they got to the tower.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.